Good morning and welcome to the regular council meeting for Thursday, November 28th for the Corporation and Township of Minden Hills. Another thank you to county staff for assisting in providing us their council chambers while our township building roof is being repaired. It's greatly appreciated. If they would have turned on the heat, it would be even better. Um, in, in review of today's agenda, there's a closed session meeting that will commence near the end of our agenda. And we have three delegations: the Halliburton County Snowmobile Association, the Halliburton County Huskies, and APE Training Summer Ice, and KPMG, our township auditor. Madam Clerk, please read the roll call to confirm council attendance.
Counselor Sisson,
Present.
Counselor Saney,
Present.
Counselor McKelvey,
Present.
Counselor Johansson,
Present.
Counselor Ingram,
Present.
Deputy Marshall,
Present.
and Mayor Carter.
Present. We respectfully acknowledge that the Township of Minden Hills is located on Treaty 20 Michisaugee territory and in the traditional territory of the Michisaugee and Chippewa nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaties First Nations, which are Curve Lake, Rama, Hiawatha, Alderville, Scugog Island, Beausoleil, and Georgina Island First Nations. We acknowledge the shared presence of Indigenous nations throughout the area and recognize its original Indigenous inhabitants as the stewards of its lands and waters since time immemorial. I call this meeting to order at 9:01 a.m. Madam Clerk, please proceed with the reading of the resolution for the approval of the agenda.
Moved by Counselor Ingram, seconded by Counselor Johansson. Be it resolved that the November 28th, 2024 regular council meeting agenda be approved as circulated.
All those in favor? That is carried. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we move on. There are no public meetings. We first start with our delegation. Neil Vanderstoop and John Enright with the Halliburton County Snowmobile Association. Please join us at the delegation table and make sure to activate your microphones.
Neil is here.
Please start.
Neil Vanderstoop, I'll introduce myself. I'm from Carnarvon. My partner and I are the last dock on the Beach River going upstream. I've been a member of the club for 7 or 8 years now as a director and a sign coordinator, the vice president, and the last 2 years I have been the president. I asked just to come in front of council just to update everyone here in town. I have my verbiage here, but I wander once in a while. Minden is my hardest fought battle to try to keep the trails into Minden, to keep them open, to keep them growing, and any help and all help that I get from town is greatly appreciated. In the past, they've concentrated on the east, and I have turned that to start concentrating on the west. So every few years, we like the opportunity to drop in and speak to council about what we do as a volunteer owned and managed non-for-profit. It all started 1971. On a hot summer day, the Chamber of Commerce got together and discussed the ways of getting people up here in the wintertime. At that meeting, someone said, let's call this group the Halliburton County Snowmobile Association. 53 years, this is our 53rd year. We are here as part of Ontario's $6 billion industry of outdoor experience that generates millions of dollars in the Halliburton area. Everybody was given these. I've asked for this. These numbers here are hard numbers. There's the big number pictures that everybody sees, but these are the hard numbers that affect us in the counties here. Every 5 years, and that's it, the clubs take on a snapshot of the activity of what brings to Halliburton County and over 200 local residents that are neighbors and directly and or indirectly employed because of our volunteer efforts. I said that wrong. There's 200 people in the area directly or indirectly involved in making this go. We have 370 kilometers of trails connecting communities, drawing snowmobiles to Halliburton and their dollars. We have a self-directed tour, so we have our own tour lip, and that money goes right here into Minden and Halliburton. It's a little day loop that you can takes you through town here, takes you back to Holly and what have you. And more than 9,000 is spent each winter for county on accommodations from Airbnbs or cottages, places like the Heather Lodge, the Highland Motel, and more. Those same people dine out at Tim Hortons, Mill Pond, Dominion, Rhubarb, Bosch Kong, Molly's, and more. 1.3 million is spent just in this area on restaurants. Those in dollars are included in here for your review. In order for this to continue, the HSC asked for your approval and land use memorandum. I think that's today sometime. Or understanding related to snowmobile trails on township-owned land, which we understand to be on the discussion later. We also solicit a couple of letters for your review from business owners who are not here today. Minden Auto Car on Water Street, the Dominion Hotel on Bob Cajun Road. Not to include all the dollars that the Highland East. These dollars don't include money coming up the rail line from Twin Lakes or from Highland East. This is us. Minden is a gateway, and there's so much to see on this trail in this township. It is a beautiful vista at every turn. You know, the area is home to two mini industries, and thanks to snowmobile, we have super tracks. The Lesters are down the street and a big help. And then we also have TechFest. So their ads, their magazines, their television shows, it's all here. They're showing us all off. These companies started up because of Halliburton Snowmobile reputation, and their founders are former CSA directors. I think this is one of the first go-rounds that we haven't had someone from a business in Minden or Halliburton, which going forward I'm going to try to fix. We have 30,000 kilometers of interconnected trails running across the province. Our share of this is 370 kilometers. Visitors come to Minden to check off, and including our township, Minden Hills, HCSA floating bridge. Downtown, there's a 130-foot bridge that crosses the Gull River, and it's a big draw in the winter. People love to sit there and get their pictures taken on the little floater. This bridge is co-owned by the town and the Snowmobile Club. We've had a few little asks that have seemed to, and that's why one of the reasons I'm having this and handing out my cards. We've had a few little asks of town. One would be to name the bridge in memory of two of the founding members of the Snowmobile Club, Bob and Gwen Bryant, who helped bring winter tourism to the Highlands. We did get as far as Brad Griffith, who's off in his motorhome now, agreeing to a steel post to be put up. But since Brad's retired, I don't know where that's gone. So we're going to bug you more about that. The HAA in Minden is also a stockholder and has invested heavily in Minden Hills Trails projects with over the past 3 years. $100,000 has been spent on Pine Springs, where it joins the Muskoka Sapling Road, Colonial Road, Sedgwick Road, and more. In addition, we have made a significant investment in grooming fleet to help take care of these trails. The true heroes in HCSA land are the landowners who allow snowmobiling on their property with no compensation because they want to help out Minden and the business navigated through the quiet months with some visitor dollars to give to the Halliburton and its neighbors an opportunity for to have some clean and fun-filled recreation As the welcome sign here in town says, in season for every season, in season every season, the HSCA says grooming for tourism. Let's do this together, and thanks for hearing me out. If you have any questions, John will answer them.
You-
Minden Hills Council cheerleader. We're taking applications for cheerleaders from anybody at this table. And your pay is a bottle of maple syrup. The other thing I'd like to say is this, Brit, like, we know we're a niche. We're not sort of mainstream. We're an outdoor experience. We did a post on your Public Works Department on Facebook installing the bridge. We put it up last night. It's been viewed in Wisconsin, across the states, and has 17,000 views so far. It's a tourist attraction. Your bridge, our bridge. Let's do grooming together. Let's make it happen. And we need your help. We need you to approve this land use thing you're dealing with later this morning. That's all my remarks. And who I am is I'm the immediate past president of the club. Thanks for having us in here.
Okay, thank
And the
you.
next municipal election, vote for snowmobiling.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you. Are there any questions from council? Counselor Saney.
Just the comment that I did get some maple syrup from the Snowmobile Association, but it's all out. So to be continued. Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments? Counselor McKelvey?
Having been raised in a snowmobile family, I can certainly appreciate the value of the Snowmobile Association and what it does for this county's economy. So I just have a bit of a question. You were asking for our help, but I'm not sure, is there something that we need to do about the bridge? Is there an issue with the bridge? It's
Sorry, my only concern with the bridge is maybe that when it goes back to the summer rusting spot, that we put it out a couple, 3 more feet. We have another floating bridge up at Partridge Lake. And the volunteers there now monitor it like weekly, moving it out and in, because the water levels, you've seen it this year, are just crazy. And it may require more work to keep up to it, because dragging it off the mud in the fall, I don't think is the greatest of ideas, although that's what it's come to.
The man of the hour is Jeff Sisson, your employee, who put it in with no water in the river. Like, big shout out to Jeff and his guys for making that happen.
Okay, are there any other questions? Seeing none, please read the resolution.
Moved by Counselor
Mr. Mayor, can I just make one more brief comment? And this is not a here and now thing. We would like to meet with anyone who will listen on long-term parking in Minden Hills for visiting snowmobilers. So that's a whole other conversation. But if you guys really want to grow this, you need to provide overnight parking. Like Dysart, like Algonquin Highlands, and you're the flatland capital of Halliburton. You got lots of land here that's flat, and I have ideas. Thanks.
Sorry.
The easiest staging area for you guys to implement is the end of Pine Springs, seeing that you get Algonquin Highlands to plow the road and plow the area out anyways. I brought that up. Someone was going to come take a look at it and a drive. It's just someplace that we can get people off the highways, parked legally, and not worried about having their vehicles towed away. That's one of the things we've been looking at.
Where can we park at Minden? Like, just from, we don't know.
Okay,
We
Thank
don't
you.
know.
thank you.
All right.
Please read the resolution.
Moved by Counselor Johansson, second by Counselor Ingram, that council receives a delegation from the Halliburton County Snowmobile Association as information.
All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you, gentlemen. No? Mhm. Okay, next we have Paul Wilson and Owen Flood with the Halliburton County Huskies. Please join us at the delegation table. Gentlemen, thank you for coming. Could you please introduce yourself and make sure you turn on the microphones as we go along?
I'm Paul Wilson, and this is my partner in crime here, Ryan Ramsey, who runs the Halliburton Husky hockey team. And Owen Flood is an assistant coach, and he has his own submission to make. So on behalf of all of us, I'd like to thank you for allowing us to come. Of course, we're here to talk about summer ice. It's my understanding that Ryan made a submission, a written submission that I think most of you people have. What I'd like to do is go through it very quickly. We won't be very long here. I know you've got a heavy agenda today, so I'll be as brief as possible. But when I'm finished, there will be questions. Probably you can direct some of them to Ryan because he knows more about the daily operation than I do. But to deal with Ryan's submission that you've seen, he runs on behalf of the Huskies a 2-week hockey program in the summer. There's 55 kids each week, so that's 110 kids come there over the course of 2 different sessions. He has a reach back agreement with our community where Ryan sends out registrations 2 weeks early to local residents and to minor hockey. And as a result of that approach, most of the kids at our summer camp are local kids. They're not summer kids that come up here. So it's providing a summer camp, if you will, for our local kids. Now, if the ice happened to go in mid or late July, Ryan says he could even add a 3rd week. I think the weeks can't be consecutive. Ryan could talk to that if you have questions. You need a week in between or the same people won't keep coming. But in fact, there could be a 3rd week if there was enough ice available and the ice was in the rink. Another thing that we need, I'm not sure if this is summer ice or not, but in May, we have our rookie camp. We have, last year we had 6 teams, 15 on a team, so that's like 90 kids paying $375 each to come to our rookie camp. The problem is the rookie camp can't be in April because all these kids are still, a lot of them are in playoffs, and most of them are minor hockey kids. So I don't know if May is summer ice or not, but it's significant that we need that ice in May to have our rookie camp. So that in a nutshell is what Ryan has told you. And if you have questions about any of those things, you can direct them to Ryan, but I have a few things I'd like to say myself. I know that some of you aren't really hockey fans, but many people in the community are thrilled that a small town like Minden is able to support a junior A hockey team. Evidence of that, we sold 325 season tickets this year, and every year we sold that many. This year we've received over $150,000 in sponsorships from the local community. These aren't outsiders. These are all people from Halliburton and Minden and the county. Our paid attendance is normally between 400 and 500 people every game. And in spite of all this, we still lose money. I contribute financially every year to make sure all of the bills are paid. Please understand me that I'm not complaining. I'm quite willing to do this, but if you remove $10,000 or $20,000 from our income source by eliminating summer ice for either the camps that Ryan runs or our rookie camp, then I'll probably have to sell the team. I'm willing to contribute financially every year, but you knock another $10,000 or $20,000 or $30,000 off of it, and it becomes a real burden. I will say that I've never run a hockey team before. Ryan's been in hockey all his life, but he's probably never run a team. And we're doing our best to make the books balance. And we're getting better at it. We haven't achieved that yet. In a perfect world, I think we might be able to break even. But if you take away these other sources of income, then that makes it really difficult. And there's people have already approached me to buy this team, but every one of them is moving it. It's not hard to sell a team, but it would be hard to sell a team to someone and keep it here. So I'm not going anywhere. I want to make this work. I want to refine our business model so that we can break even. And when I'm out of the business, somebody else can take over, but nobody's going to take over if they have to throw in 10 or 20 or 30 or $40,000 every year. And that's not to mention the fact that I probably put $200,000 into the building between the dressing room, the other little improvements in room 6, and the drink rails. And again, I'm not complaining. I'll never get that back. I'm not asking to get it back. But I just want to make this Halberton Huskies team a viable thing that stays here for a long time. And that's our objective. So if you have questions about anything that the first part of my submission that Ryan talked about is summer camp or the rookie camp, we'd be pleased to try to answer them, probably direct them to Ryan.
Okay. Do either of you gentlemen have other comments you want to make before we go to questions?
Well, Owen's submission is, he is our assistant coach and is in keeping with what we're saying, but he has his own submission, I think. So maybe we deal with Ryan here first and then Owen can take over. Is that fair?
Yeah,
Sure.
the only thing I'll say, just on the rookie camp, we're not allowed to, we don't get dates. Like Hockey Canada will give us dates on the rookie camp, and it's usually the first or the second week of May where they allow us to, because technically the season isn't over until late April. So that's why we can't really run our rookie camp till May.
By the way, we want to be in the playoffs in April anyway.
Yeah. We haven't reached that goal, but we're working on it.
Okay, so are there any questions from council on this first part of the delegation? Seeing none? Over to you.
Hi, my name's Owen. I local business owner in town, Ape Training and Spot 97 Fitness Center just down the road from here. I moved my business to Minden in order to try and help grow my business. But the one thing that's slowing me down from growing my business is the summer ice issue. Right now, I currently go to Halliburton to get summer ice, which with only having the one arena is really hard to get the ice time that I require to do everything. I have roughly 80 kids right now, local kids that I train all summer long on the ice. If I was able to do that in Minden, it would allow me to grow my business because I could have more kids on the ice and ideally be able to source out more ice time. I spend about $10,000 in the months of July and August on ice in Halliburton. I would love and be more than willing to bring that money and ice time to Minden if I had the opportunity to. But the thing is I need ice for July and August. I run programs every Tuesday night in Halliburton for 8 weeks. So for me to try and, split half and half doesn't make a lot of sense scheduling wise and just trying to keep everything in order. Allowing me to come to Minden saves me traveling, allows me to focus more on the kids, on my business and everything. So it would be a huge benefit to have the ice in Minden. Other things like I have clients, Matt Duchesne and other pro and junior players that I train in the summer as well. They bring their ice to Minden in August, but there's some pushback from them about wanting to do it all year in Minden as well. Ice surface is bigger, it's better training conditions for those players to take to their next level as well. So yeah, I'm just here to support the having summer ice because it not only helps me and the community, but the Huskies, all sorts of people. So I think it would be a big benefit if there's a way that we can work that out.
Okay. Are there any questions from council? Deputy Mayor Shell?
It's not necessarily a question, it's more of a comment, but I'll just remind council, and I know everything comes at a cost, but when we were designing and building the arena, there was a reason why we went with the NHL sized ice, and there was a reason why we built it that we could have summer ice. So being on council at that time, the original intent was that we would be able to have the summer ice. So anyway, just some background information for anybody who's unaware.
Any other questions? Counselor Saini?
Yes, thank you. I just want to say thank you for being here. As people know, probably I was probably the only person on council that voted against this extraordinary arena at that time. It's here now, and it's great to have it here, and we've got to make the most of it. We've got to do everything we can. I can see a lot of spin-off effects from this arena that you're not mentioning here. And one of the things I also want to mention is I know you have one of the health practitioners in town working with the hockey teams in terms of making sure that there's no injuries and how they respond right away to hits and things like that. So I want to really commend the team and the managers for doing that kind of safety work with the kids. And we have it here now. We've got to make this work for everybody. I'm curious why anybody would want to leave Minden with the team, because this is the best place to be, but maybe that's a discussion later. Yes. So, but anyway, yeah, so I support what you're doing, and I want to make sure that we can continue this in every way we can and make it really financially viable, because it also is a great support for a lot of the businesses, because I see the spin-off effects that you haven't even mentioned here at this point. And that can only grow with time, as you're recommending, and you wanting to make that happen here is great for us, because now we can find ways to support that. And other businesses who might have felt left out of this will also find ways to be part of this team as well. So thank you for your work on this.
Counselor McKelvey?
So no surprise to anybody around this table. I've mentioned it a couple times about my support of the Huskies team, and I'm still waiting to get all of council to a game here at the same time. So having said that, I just want all of you gentlemen to understand that we're tasked with trying to come up with a balanced budget, and it's costing us over $2 million to operate that facility. So we need to come up with something that everyone can win on this. That's and we can't just look at one thing in isolation of everything else. So I'm a big supporter of the Huskies. I see the economic benefits. You just have to leave a game and watch everybody pull it in front of the Dominion to go in and see Shirley. So I just need everybody to realize that this is not an anti-Huskies thing that we're dealing with. We're dealing with a budget that 19% of our tax levies go into that facility. So that's a lot of money for us too.
Counselor Ingram?
The chair, Owen, you mentioned here 8 weeks. I'm assuming that's from July to the end of August.
Yes, that's
And how
correct.
many hours a week would you use? Roughly.
Yeah, so I
Yes,
use 4 to
registration.
5 hours a week every Tuesday night in
Okay.
Halliburton. And then with Matt Duchesne's ice time as well, he probably takes up about 6 hours a week. So we'd be
Okay.
looking at 10 to 12 maybe hours a week through
Thank you.
myself.
I appreciate that.
Question, you mentioned 80 to 90 kids. Just describe a little bit of what you're talking about in terms of training and so on.
Yeah, so I do all like on ice skill development with these kids in the summer. So developing their skating, shooting, stick handling, all that type of stuff. I would say it's probably 95% locals that do that. All age groups from kids who are 9 years old to 16, 17 years old. Right now I currently have roughly 80 of them. Having a bigger ice surface, I could probably accommodate having more in Minden as well, and be able to open it up to even more local kids to develop and enjoy the game of hockey. So
And that's boys and girls?
yes, that's both. It's open to anyone. So
Okay. Are there any other questions? Please read the resolution.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Shell, seconded by Councilor McKelvey, that council receives a presentation from Paul Wilson, President of the Halliburton County Huskies, and Owen Flood, APE training regarding summer ices information.
All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for coming in, and we will be considering these things as we go through our budget process. Okay, so we go from the table to the big screen. And joining us on the big screen is Oscar Poloni, our auditor, who's going to be talking about the year-end audit. Welcome, Oscar, and please proceed when you're ready.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, and good morning, members of council. Thank you very much for allowing us the opportunity to be here today to present our audit findings and the financial statements for the Township of Minden Hill for the year ended December 31st, 2023. So to facilitate the conversation, we've prepared a bit of a presentation that provides the high-level points. So next slide, please. So, Council, our audit procedures have been completed in accordance with Canadian auditing standards, which are the rules that govern how auditors do this. And what you'll find is that in our audit opinion, we make reference to materiality. And materiality is the threshold of errors that as auditors, we are able to accommodate before we either require them to be corrected or we change our audit opinion. So, consistent with not-for-profit organizations in general, materiality is typically calculated as a percentage of either revenues or expenses, and we are allowed under our methodology to go up to 3%. We've set materiality at 2.5% of the prior year's revenues, and that yields materiality level of $440,000. Now, as auditors, we use materiality for a number of different purposes. We use it, for example, to calculate our sample sizes. But for members of council, what I would suggest the most meaningful use of materiality is it determines what's called a posting threshold. And this is the level above which, if we actually have an uncorrected audit error or audit difference, we are required to bring it forward to council today. And our posting threshold is $22,000 or 5% of materiality. And so just to put this in perspective, this is 0.1% of your total revenues and 0.04% of your total assets. So that is effectively the level of precision that we have from an audit standpoint. So we are prepared to issue our audit opinion. Under the rules, financial statements are live until such time as they're approved by council. So there's really three things that we need to do. We need to have council approve the financial statements. We need to receive a management representation letter from your staff indicating, for example, they've given us all of the information, there's nothing they haven't disclosed. And then because the financial statements are live up till today, we just need to update our audit file to the date of the audit opinion. Now, if you read the audit opinion, what you'll notice is it's different than last year. It's been modified. And the reason for that, council, is because there's new accounting standard that came out with respect to asset retirement obligations. And so this standard has been applied on what auditors will call a retrospective basis. And what that means is we've applied it retroactively. So the numbers in last year's financial statements have changed. So if you could move to the next slide, please. So there were 5 new accounting standards that came out for the 2023 fiscal year. The first 4 related to financial instruments and financial statement presentation, and they haven't had any impact on your financial statements. So they're implemented, they're in effect, but it really hasn't changed anything. The 5th standard, though, relating to asset retirement obligations has created a difference. And so, council, an asset retirement obligation is a legislative or regulatory requirement for you to remediate a site at the end of its useful life. And this could be property, this could be a building as well. Typically, what you will find for municipalities is the main asset retirement obligations relate to landfills and also relate to asbestos contamination inside buildings. And so there's a difference between the old rules and the new rules that have changed the accounting for this. So under the old standard, there was a standard that dealt with contaminated sites. And what it said was that as long as the asset was in productive use, you didn't have to record your asset retirement obligation. Under the new standard for asset retirement obligations, there is no longer an exemption for productive use. And so what this means is whether you're using a building or not, if this has asbestos in it, you have to record the remediation requirements. So now what you're going to find, council, is you're booking asset retirement obligations for properties and buildings that you never booked before. Secondly, there's a change with respect to landfills. So in the past, landfills, you would recognize the liability on the basis of what percentage of the landfill capacity was used. So if it was 50% full, you would recognize 50% of the landfill. What happens now is there's no longer a prorating for capacity. So now you record the full amount, whether your landfill is 10% full or 99% full. So very different approaches between the old rules and the new rules, which changed the number. So next slide, please. So in your financial statements right now, there is an asset retirement obligation. There's actually two asset retirement obligations that are recorded. There's about $1.5 million related to the cost of closing your landfill and monitoring your landfill after the closure. And there's about $800,000 relating to asbestos inside your buildings. And so the number that you can see is obviously north of $2 million. It's not an inconsequential amount. And as I've mentioned, you've applied this on a retroactive basis. So part of this has actually flowed through your opening surplus last year of about $1.14 million. And then there was a portion that was recognized last year and a portion recognized this year as well. So obviously, council, $2.5 million is a big number. I just want to provide some perspective with respect to asset retirement obligations, because while these are a liability on your financial statements, it's important to understand the context. Unlike your bill for hydro, unlike your bill for capital projects, for example, you are not going to incur this liability anytime soon. The requirement to remediate happens at the end of useful life. So if you keep a property in use for 30 or 40 years, you're actually not going to recognize or have to pay that liability for 30 to 40 years. Similarly, council, for landfills, for example, when you pay your closure and post-closure costs, you don't pay them all at once. You actually pay them over a number of years. And in some cases for landfill, the payment period is over 20 years. And so because of that, council, what I would suggest to you is when you view this as a liability, you have to look at this as an accounting estimate as opposed to something that's more immediate, something that requires settlement in cash. This is very different than your OPP bill. This is very different than your hydro bill. And so typically, council, what we find is while you record this liability on your book, most municipalities that I deal with do not actually budget for it. And so because of that, it's something that you'll need to look at from a reconciliation perspective. I'm just trying to tell you right now, there isn't going to be a requirement for you to come up with $2.5 million during 2025. Because that's not what this type of liability is. So just a bit of background about the changes, about the number, and some of the context, council. If you find it helpful, then that's great. So next slide, please. So with respect to the financial statements themselves, the first statement is your statement of financial position, and this is a summary of your assets and your liabilities at year end. So just in terms of some of the changes that you will see, your overall cash balances are just under $11 million at the end of the year. This is down by about $670,000 from the prior year. And there's basically three things that have pulled this number. So the municipality, from an operating perspective, once you adjust for accounts payable and accounts receivable, generated a surplus of about $6,070,000. Now, that surplus was used to fund roughly $6.4 million of capital, which brought the cash balances down. And you also paid about $340,000 of principal on your long-term debt, which isn't reflected in your surplus. So those three factors really have accounted for the decrease in your cash balances of about $700,000. You'll notice that in your financial statements, there's accounts receivable and taxes receivable. These have gone down by about $50,000 on a year-over-year basis. And there's a number of things that have influenced this number. So your taxes receivable have gone up by just under $300,000. Part of this, council, is because your levy's higher. So as your levy's higher, your accounts receivable is typically higher. But what you'll also notice, council, is that over the last 3 years, your taxes receivable as a percentage of your municipal levy has actually increased every year. So it used to be 10%. Last year it was 13%. This year it was 15%. We've had some conversations with your finance staff about why this is the case, and it really comes down to the timing of registration of properties for collection of taxes. I will say, council, that in my experience, most of my municipalities are starting to see increases in taxes receivable as a percentage of municipal levy. And the reason for that is oftentimes staff are balancing multiple demands. And so tax registration really may not necessarily rise to the top in terms of competing priorities. Offsetting this increase, your HST receivable has gone down by about $480,000. This really is a question of the timing of capital expenses. If you have big capital going into the end of the year, you typically have higher HST receivable. And then in addition, your government grants have gone up as well. There are some government grant programs for capital this year that weren't present last year that would cause an additional increase as well. From a liabilities perspective, your accounts payable and accrued liabilities have gone up by about $1.4 million. We've looked at the balances, and the big driver of this, council, is capital. So you have construction-related accruals for progress payment certificates and costs that are outstanding at year end that are in accounts payable at a higher balance this year. Similarly, holdbacks that you have for your contractors for performance are up as well. And part of the reason for this, council, is you've had a much higher capital program this year. As you notice above, you spent about $6.4 million in capital. In 2022, that was $3.5 million. So as your capital goes up, we would expect your accounts payable to go up as well. So next slide, please. So just in terms of your accounts receivable and taxes receivable, to provide you with a bit of background with respect to this, this is a buildup of the amounts. And you'll notice that the taxes receivable really is comprised of a number of different years, because property owners, you can't take action for unpaid taxes until you're 3 years through. But you'll notice that the bulk of this is actually current. So it's not like you have significant balances that have been outstanding for multiple years. Most of what you have in your taxes receivable, about 2/3 of the balance, is actually related to 2023 taxes. You'll also see water and sewer balances receivable. These are billings for 23 that are recorded at year end. The HST, which is the recovery that you have on HST paid, sorry, and then ICP funding. And this is an infrastructure funding program, and it's about $1.1 million, $952,000 of which is for the Sedgwick Bridge, $71,000 is for the Highway 35 capital project, and $100,000 is for the boardwalk reconstruction. Then there's other receivables of various amounts, miscellaneous in your books. So next slide, please. In terms of other liabilities, you can see that there's two deferred revenue lines. There's deferred revenue obligatory reserve funds and deferred revenue other. And the difference between the two is an obligatory reserve fund is where, under the provisions of an agreement, you have to actually defer the revenue until it's spent. And generally speaking, it relates to two balances. There's the federal gas tax program that you receive for capital, and then there's also parkland fees. So when you do a subdivision development, when you do development, contributor or developers are required to either provide land or funds in lieu of land that are then restricted in use for similar developments. So during the year, you received about $204,000 with respect to federal gas tax, which you've recognized all as income. You've basically spent everything that you've received in gas tax, so there is no balance of deferred revenue. You can see that your parkland has gone up by about $128,000, and this is the amount of contributions that you've received during the year, which you haven't taken into income yet. So in terms of other liabilities, your long-term debt was at about $10.8 million versus $11.1 million last year. This is a decrease of about $338,000. And what that is that's the principal repayments on your cemetery loan and your Infrastructure Ontario debt as well. You can see the asset retirement obligation coming in at $2.3 million. There's also a liability for contaminated sites, which are your former landfills that are currently closed as well. So next slide, please. So in terms of other assets, the largest single asset that the municipality does have is your tangible capital assets. This is the investment that you have in your infrastructure, your pipes, your roads, your bridges, so on and so forth. As you spend capital, this number goes up, and then you write it off over the useful life, and this number comes down. So you'll see your total capital assets have gone up by about $4.3 million. So there were $6.4 million of capital additions during the year. The largest single related to Bob Cajun and Scott Line reconstruction, which was about $3.9 million. There's another $1.2 million that related to various roads that were resurfaced during the year. Improvements to your landfill, the installation of culverts, some self-contained breathing apparatus equipment for your firefighters, and then the boardwalk refurbishment. You'll remember there's $100,000 of grants receivable for that as well. Offsetting these increases is $2.1 million of amortization expense, which is you expending or expensing the capital over its useful life. So bit of a discussion with respect to your statement of financial position. If you move to the next slide, please. The next statement is your statement of operations, and this is a summary of the revenues and the expenses of the township for the year. So you'll notice total revenues have gone up by about $481,000. This is an increase of 2.8% from the prior year. $626,000 of this is the increase in your municipal levy for taxation. In addition, user fees have gone up by about $95,000. Investment income has also gone up by about $525,000. What we're seeing across the sector, council, is investment income is increasing in 2023 because of higher interest rates and just higher investment balance income that you're making on bank balances. Offsetting these are about $1.1 million in lower provincial grants during the year, which relate to capital. You'll see that over the same period, your operating expenses have gone up by about 0.5% or $68,000. And that has left you with a surplus of $2.4 million for accounting purposes. Now, council, as we've discussed in the past, this is an accounting surplus. It is significantly different than how you budget. And later on in the presentation, there is a reconciliation. But if you move to the next slide, please. This is a summary of government grants over the last 3 years. So the yellow bar is 2021, the blue bar is 22, and the red bar is 2023. You'll notice, council, that the largest significant or the largest individual grant that you have is the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund, or OMPF, of just under $1.9 million. This relates to unconditional funding that's provided by the province that you could use for whatever purposes as you see fit. The significant changes from last year to this year really relate to capital. So you can see there's 2 capital programs that you have, OCIF, the Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund, and the ICIP program. And what you'll notice is OCIF is down slightly, about $30,000 compared to the prior year, but ICP funding was $952,000 last year, none used this year. And so because of that, this is what's causing the significant decrease from a grant perspective. There was also about $100,000 from the Ontario Trillium Foundation last year, which was a one-time grant that didn't repeat. You can see that 2 years ago in 2021, the province provided the municipality with $202,000 under the Safe Restart program. This is pandemic-related funding, and obviously as the pandemic has ended, that funding no longer applies. Next slide, please. We've mentioned your operating expenses as well, and this is a breakdown of your operating expenses by component. You can see that your single largest operating expense is personnel, coming in at roughly $4.6 million during the year. You can see your material costs have gone down. I'll caution you, council, this is where changes in the asset retirement obligation flow through your financial statements. So to the extent that there was a bigger increase in 2022 versus 2023, that may cause the cost of materials to come down. You can see contracted services are up slightly compared to the prior year, and then your amortization expense is pretty consistent over the last 3 years. So, council, as I've mentioned, you did have a reported surplus for financial statement purposes of $2.4 million. But as we've discussed in the past, there's significant differences between your financial statements and how you budget. So if you go to the next slide, please. This is essentially a reconciliation of your financial statements to your budget. And so what we do on this schedule, council, for the information of council, is we take out things that are in your financial statements but aren't in your budget, and we consider things that are in your budget which aren't in your financial statements. So as we've mentioned, your surplus for 23 for the financial statements was $2.4 million. That includes $2.1 million of amortization expense, which you don't budget because it's not a cash expense. So we've added that back. Similarly, the increase in the asset retirement obligation, we've added back as well because it's not cash. We've discussed the principal repayments on the long-term debt, and so we deduct those from your surplus because they're not included in the calculation of your surplus, despite the fact that in your budget, you reflect them as an expense. We've taken off the $6.4 million of capital expenditures because you budget for capital costs when you incur them. And then there's net transfers from reserves of about $330,000. So when I adjust your financial statements, council, for the differences between how you report for statement purposes versus your budget, you actually have an operating deficit of about $1.7 million. And I want to caution council, that's because of the timing of the Scotch Line project. And so what you effectively have is you have unfunded capital because what you've done is you've spent roughly $4 million on Scotch Line, but you haven't put all of the financing in place. So to provide this reconciliation fully, we start with that adjusted deficit, if we will. We know that during 2024, you spent an additional $124,000 on the Scotch Line project, which is a drawdown on your financial position. Excuse me, but your staff are proposing as part of the 2025 budget process to receive total proceeds through a debenture of funding for Scotch Line of $2,288,000. So you actually have to take that in as a source of revenue because it funds part of those capital costs that were incurred in 2023. Once you make this adjustment, council, your operating surplus, after you adjust for the future capital funding and the other benefits, is actually $424,000. So significantly lower than the surplus on the financial statements. And of that surplus of $424,000, council, $330,000 was because you transferred money in from reserves. So while your financial statements actually shows a relatively large surplus, well, relatively large from my perspective, the reality is that the municipality over the last 2 years has been operating very close to break even. Where in 2022, your reconciliation gave you a small surplus of about $124,000. In 2023, it gave you about $424,000. And once again, recognize that your revenues are in the tens of millions of dollars. So just a bit of perspective with respect to your surplus, council, because once again, we think it's important to understand what's in and what's out, because the reality is your actual surplus is very different than what shows on your financial statements. So if I may, council, that's a bit of a discussion about the financial statements. If you can move forward, please. Next slide as well. Consistent with what we've done in the past for the municipality, we've also provided some benchmarking just to give you some perspective as to how your municipality looks in terms of financial position and financial performance in comparison to some other peer groups. So council, we've selected other municipalities that have similar household levels and similar tax levels. So basically, somewhere between 3,000 to 5,000 households and a municipal levy of anywhere between $9 million to $11 million. I do want to say, council, we haven't picked anybody in Haliburton County. Also, council, just to let you know, this is based on 2022 information because we use the financial information return, and that's the most recent year where everybody's is available. And council, I also want to say that this is lower tier only. So we haven't considered Haliburton County in any of our analysis because taxpayers, not only do they pay the lower tier bill for Minden Hills, they pay the county apportionment as well. So following these slides, and we don't need to go to them, there's a series of graphs that indicate the individual comparators. But just in terms of the indicators, Council, I'd like to bring you through them in a high level, if you will. We talked about the taxes receivable as a percentage of the municipal levy. So in 2022, that was about 13.5%. You can see that on average, the comparator average was about 12%, and that ranged anywhere from a low of about 8% to a high of 15%. So what I would suggest, Council, is you're in the upper half of the range. If you actually go to the slide, you'll see that there's a number of comparators that are actually very close to you. Reserves and reserve funds per household is something that we look at to talk about financial resources available to the municipality to fund capital or unforeseen events. Your reserve and reserve fund balances work out to be just over $3,900 per house. The comparator municipalities range anywhere from $1,700 to just under $10,000, with an average of about $4,700. So what this would tell us, Council, is in comparison to your peer groups, you're actually low a little bit in terms of your reserves and reserve fund balances. Offsetting this, Council, or in comparison to this, your long-term debt is actually the highest of the comparator group, and that runs anywhere from some municipalities who have no long-term debt to some municipalities that will use debt in specific circumstances. You can see the average is about $1,500. I will caution, Council, municipalities that adopt pay-as-you-go oftentimes don't invest in capital to the same extent that other municipalities will, because they forego the investments because they don't have the funds. A big component of your long-term debt is the IO debt for the new arena. So you do have to recognize, Council, this isn't the case where you have 20 loans outstanding, and because of that, you have significantly higher debt. Your debt is very specific. It's very focused. You have a brand new arena versus my community where the arena is 70 years old. We do look at taxation for affordability perspective. In Council, we look at it in two perspectives. One is we look at residential taxes per household, and we also look at the per household taxes as a percentage of household income to try to get some sense as to, for lack of a better term, municipal cost of living. And what you'll find, Council, is that for both indicators, Minden Hills has the highest level of residential taxes and the highest level of residential taxes as a percentage of household income. I want to caution, Council, that service levels will impact this. It was interesting, the councillor who talked about the cost of operating a new arena and how much of that levy that takes up. There's the understanding that not only do you see that new arena in your debt, but you see it in your operating costs as well, which account for your levy. Just the main purpose of this, Council, is oftentimes people will think their taxes are high compared to their peer groups when they actually have room to move. What we would suggest, Council, is when you look at the comparator group, being towards the upper end of the range really then calls into the question, I'm not saying cut taxes. It is a bit of a different message, though, when you're sitting on the high end. The other thing we've looked at, and these are new indicators, your worship and members of council, is we've looked at rate of growth. And the reason for the rate of growth is in the inflationary environment that we're in, everything's going up. So the question is are your costs going up at a reasonable level, or are they going up excessively? So what you'll find is that from 2017 to 2022, your operating costs have, on average, gone up by about 5.2% a year every year for that 5-year period. Not the lowest, council, but actually below the average. And you can see from the slide here that it ranges from 3.9% to 9.9% with an average of 5.9%. So your rate of tax increase really has been consistent with your peer groups, operating costs has been consistent with your peer groups. From a municipal levy perspective, you can see that your levy has also gone up as well by about 6% a year. So slightly higher than the increase in your operating costs. This is due to capital, council. And so when you look at it, you are slightly above the average, which was 4.8%, but other municipalities have increases from 2.8% to 9%. So once again, service levels, capital program will draw this into conclusion. I do want to say though, council, it's important to recognize the definition of inflation matters. So generally speaking, when people talk about inflation, they talk about the consumer price index, CPI, which during this period was about 3.2% per year. I can appreciate that this is subjective and open to interpretation, but I actually don't believe that the consumer price index is the measure of inflation for municipalities, because the consumer price index assumes you're buying a certain basket of goods, groceries, gasoline, household expenditures, that type of stuff. What we find municipalities, or what I would suggest, my interpretation is that municipalities are more akin to construction businesses, because you're doing very heavy capital, you're buying heavy vehicles, you're buying a lot of products that are petroleum based, for example, road surfacing, road reconstruction, you're paying wages inside a unionized environment. And so because of that, I would suggest to you, council, and once again, it's only my suggestion, the more appropriate measure of inflation is something called the non-residential building price index. And this is a measure of inflation for construction-related activities that are non-residential, so building institutional properties, civil engineering works. That's maintained by Statistics Canada. It's done by a number of different geographies. What you'll notice is the index for Canada as a whole was 7% per year, every year from 2017 to 22. In the city of Toronto is actually 9.6%. So council, if you buy my comment, and you don't have to, but that the rate of inflation is really the non-residential building price index as opposed to the consumer price index, what you'll see is that the increase that you have in operating costs and the increase that you have in tax levy, while higher than CPI, is actually consistent with those price indexes, if not a little lower. And so just a different way of looking at your expenditures, if your costs were significantly higher than those non-residential building indexes, then the question would be, is there an issue that's causing rates of increases that are higher than what would reasonably expected? What this really tells me, council, is the growth rate in your operating costs and the growth rate in your tax levy is a reflection of inflation. So, your worship, members of council, that concludes our presentation. I would like to thank you once again for allowing us the opportunity to be here. If there are any questions, more than happy to answer them at this time.
Well, thank you very much for that presentation. I think that there's no doubt going to be some questions. So let's start. Who would like to go first? Councillor McKelvey.
One of the things that I noticed was the substantial amount of parkland revenue that you mentioned from development, $128,000, I believe it was. We haven't had a lot of development, so I believe this is probably the purchase prices, the land sale of our shoreline road allowance, and we've been putting it into a parkland reserve, but it really doesn't have to go there anymore. That changed quite some time ago. So,
Yeah.
But because we're doing that, you still have to recognize it as a parkland reserve fund.
Through you, your worship, we'd have to coordinate with your staff on that to see the terms of the restriction. We know there was $128,000, councillor, of proceeds relating to shoreline sales that we reclassified out of deferred revenue and moved into other revenue during the year. And I know we had that conversation with Sherry Mulholland and posted the entry. So councillor, if I may, I can look into the audit file and get back to you with respect to that. I do know we did look at the shoreline sales and we did reclassify them into revenue. So I'll have to check to see what that number is specifically.
Okay, Councillor McKelvey.
Okay, the other question was, there's this accounting surplus and then there's the actual surplus. So it was brought down to 1.74 million, I believe you said. We did a resolution, I believe in April, that any of that, what I'm going to call real surplus, would all go to bring down the debt requirement for the Scotch Line Bobcaygeon Road. But it seems like you're only bringing some of it, because you made reference to we have left 424,000 think it was on page 12 of 20 in my package. So I'm just wanting to make sure that you were aware of that resolution we actually did, or?
Through you, your worship, Counselor, we were aware of it. What we did was we picked up the numbers from your 2025 budget. And so because of that, we haven't adjusted for the actual surplus during the year. We just ran the continuity through. To the extent that council decides you want to use that full amount to reduce the amount of the debenture that you would issue for the Scotch Line Road project, then obviously the number would come down by 424,000. Counselor, we just picked up the number that was in your 2025 budget because that was the amount of the future debenture that we understood staff was looking at the time.
Councilor McKelvey?
Okay, so are you going to go back and revise the statements then? I'm a little confused on this, sorry.
Sorry if I may, Counselor, there's no requirement for us to revise the statements. The surplus is the surplus because the debenture is actually out of 2025. And so it really is more of a question, not so much of what your 2023 financial statements say, but rather what you do in 2025 from a debenture process. That's when you close the loop on the remaining financing. The 424,000 drops to the bottom line as your accumulated surplus, if you will.
Councilor McKelvey?
Just one other, it's not a question, it's more of a statement, a comment. You know, the Public Sector Accounting Board keeps changing the accounting standards every year. It seems when you come, it's almost like our planner having to deal with the changes to the provincial policy statements constantly. So do you think that this is, are they done? Is this going to continue?
Through you, your worship, and council, I am sorry to say this, no, they're not done. There's new standards that are coming out in 2027 that are going to change your financial statement format. There's a new standard that is applicable for 2024 that deals with revenue recognition. There's discussions of new standards with respect to employee future benefits. You know, what I would suggest, council, is the standards are always changing. My experience is we're not done.
So a question, comment from me and the, you know, when we are looking at the comparators, you know, you made the good point that a large chunk of the, you know, debt and so on for us is because of the arena. But, you know, in looking at these, it's really difficult to do these comparisons because, you know, when did you build the new fire hall, or when did you build the new ambulance bay, or when did you invest in the, you know, your landfills? And so, you know, many of the decisions that we make are decisions that are being made for the next decade. And, you know, the absolute timing of that, particularly when you're looking at an audit that's looking at a, you know, a snapshot of a year, you can get some wildly different numbers in doing the comparisons to the other locations. So it's, you know, I think that in general, when I looked at these, you know, the numbers were not terrible, particularly when you consider that, you know, we've been trying to keep any growth in this in taxation to be less than than inflation, and, you know, trying to do our best to manage in that way.
No, and to your point, your worship, it is, and I did try to explain this. The bulk of your debt, for example, relates to the arena. Had you not built the arena and taken out that debt, you would have had among the lowest, right? So to your point, it is point in time, and that's ultimately, you know, one of the challenges and the limitations on this. We wanted to provide some benchmarking just to provide you with some indicators as a value. So,
Any good questions, Councillor Saini?
Yes, thank you. Page 14 of your report, and I appreciate you going through the consumer price index and the non-residential building price indexes. In a municipality like ours, it's primarily residential. We don't have as much business and commercial taxation as many other municipalities do, probably because we're rural. But can you explain what that implication might be for our taxes and our tax base, and at what point, and could you confirm that what we really need to do is grow our commercial and our business sections to take some of that pressure off of households? Can you give us an opinion on that? Thank you.
Well, if I may, and through you, your worship, just, from our perspective, when we talk about inflation, residential versus non-residential price indices, whether your municipality is comprised primarily of residential or primarily of non-residential, it doesn't really factor into our view on that inflationary point, because at the end of the day, you're still building roads, you're still building civil engineering works, you're still doing excavations for pipes, that type of stuff. I do think, Councillor, to your point about taxation, the residential versus non-residential mix really becomes an issue. And for a couple of different reasons in my perspective. One is, typically in the province of Ontario, non-residential taxpayers, both commercial and industrial, pay a higher rate of tax than residential properties because of the concept of the tax ratio or the weighting, where industrial will pay 4 to 6 times what a residential taxpayer does. So obviously, to the extent that you have non-residential taxpayers, you have the ability to shift the burden, if you will, to alleviate the pressure on homeowners. One of the things that you'll find is that even in larger centers like Toronto, for example, residential taxpayers, I believe, make up about 70% of the total assessment base, or of the total levy. And so because of that, you're never going to get to a position where non-residential taxes will account for 50% or more. In rural communities, in smaller communities, the percentage residential has a tendency to be higher, which means the impact of inflationary pressures, the impact of operational cost pressures really is felt predominantly more on residential taxes. So I think, to your point, Councillor, it's important to recognize that to the extent that you do have those inflationary pressures, residential taxpayers take up most of the burden. And I know there are some municipalities north of you in the Parry Sound District, for example, where residential taxes are more than 90% of the total tax levy as well. So basically, you always need to be alive to the impact there as well. The other concern that we have, Council, is about reassessment. So the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation, as you're aware, is the body that's responsible for reassessing property taxes. And they haven't done it since 2016. So they are past due in terms of reassessing property values. I don't know what the numbers look like, but if I were to hazard a guess, with everything that's happening with respect to housing in the province of Ontario, I would suggest that residential tax assessments are going to go up at a higher rate than non-residential. And what that means, Council, is residential taxes can go up even if your municipal levy stays the same, because their share of the pie gets larger because it's calculated based on assessed value. So ultimately, Council, how you deal with this really comes down to your priorities and what you want to do for the Township of Minden. Some places will not pursue industrial or commercial activity because they want to preserve the certain feel of the town. They want to be a recreational community. They don't want to have heavy impacts from trucks and from noise, from industrial activities, that type of stuff. So my experience, Councillors, and hasn't always been motivated purely by tax impacts. It comes down to what your official plans say, what's your strategy for employment lands, and then what are Council's strategic priorities around economic development. So there's no, and I'm not trying to be evasive here, Council, there really is no answer for that, other than it really very much depends on what Council would like to see. Are you trying to alleviate pressure on residential taxpayers by encouraging non-residential development? Or are you looking for a vision of Minden Hills that is consistent with more of a heavy skewing towards residential taxes. And that, council, ultimately is your question to answer. So council, I'm so sorry, Counselor, I hope I've answered your question. I'm not sure I have.
Go ahead.
Yes, you have. I think that's very important, especially as a community, we begin to develop our strategic plan. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? And CFO, did you have any comment that you wanted to make before we wrap up?
I guess just on the Scotch line, Bob Cajun Road, that would be coming more so in the January budget meetings with more refined numbers. And we'll take that into consideration on all debt looked at.
Okay. Mr. Poloni, thank you very much for joining us. Hopefully you're enjoying warm, sunny weather in Sudbury. And
To be honest with you, your worship, I'm in Cancun.
oh,
And I did want you to know that I purposely,
well,
I brought a suit for this meeting.
that's a dagger to our hearts, but thank you.
You're most
Thank you
welcome.
for joining us.
Have a good day,
Could I
everybody.
have a resolution, please?
Moved by Counselor Anderson, second by Counselor Ingram, that council receives a delegation from Oscar Poloni, Township Auditor, on behalf of KPMG as information.
All those in favor? That is carried. All right, we'll take a break until 10:30. Not at this time, I don't think. Okay. All right, do you have a delegation? I thought there was going to be a change, but that's. Okay,
Normally, you would accept the financial statements as presented so that the auditor could take the draft off and that we can publish.
okay. You need to move your seconder. Okay. Yeah. Thought there was going to be a change and then we're going to be come back.
So it's Counselor Johansson and Counselor Ingram, and all I've added is, and further, that council accepts the financial statements as presented. Are you good with that? Do you want approves instead of accept? Is council comfortable with that? Okay. Moved by Counselor Johansson, seconded by Counselor Ingram, that council receives a delegation from Oscar Poloni, Township Auditor, on behalf of KPMG as information, and further, that council approves the financial statements as presented.
All those in favor? That is carried. All right. Now we will recess until 10:35. Okay, welcome back. We go to item 7, which is the adoption of minutes from previous meeting for the meetings of November 14th and the 3 public meetings. Are there any comments or amendments? Seeing none, please read the resolution.
Moved by Counselor Sisson, seconded by Counselor McKelvey, be it resolved that council approves the following meeting minutes: November 14th, 2024, regular council minutes, and 3 public meeting minutes regarding applications PLZBA 2024063, PLZBA 2024041, and PLZBA 2024056.
All those in favor? That is carried. Payments of accounts for November 28th.
There's none.
There is none.
No.
All right, well, we won't talk about that. All right, so the mayor's report. I think at this time of year, we have an awful lot that's going on. As you know, over the last week, we had the tree lighting ceremony and the Santa Claus parade, but over and above that, this is a time when we do budgets, and the budgets for us, because we have the single taxpayer, and I've said this before, we have to be concerned with the school board budget, the budget for the county, and the budget for our municipality. And there are challenges to all of those. The other things that are happening at this time of year is that we all of a sudden have lots of meetings that are taking place, not only because of the budgets, but tomorrow we have the first meeting of the new police detachment board here in Haliburton County. Last Monday, we had presentations and a meeting with the HHS discussing their status and some of their plans. So this is a very, very busy time of year. So with that, along with everybody being busy and trying to wrap up their years, please take the time to enjoy this holiday season and the parties and all that comes with it, and stay safe and enjoy yourself. I will now move it over to the Roma board. Councillor Saini.
Okay, thank you. Through the mayor. We had a very productive meeting at our last meeting on the 15th. There was the Roma board discussed several policy priorities, meeting with Minister Calandra, Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing. Some of the issues that we discussed were the new resources and funding tools for housing enabling infrastructure to help address the rural funding gap, including how municipal services, corporations, and private communal water systems could help as well. And so some movement and changes on some of that provincial policy on that. The urgent need for a strategic approach to homelessness was so well recognized across the rural Ontario, not an urban problem anymore. The minister acknowledged the need for wraparound supports for housing. So it's not just the building, needs to be the wraparound supports for all sorts of other support systems that we are aware of. The rural Ontario struggled with the shortage of primary care providers, emergency room closures, we know that too well, the over-reliance of community paramedics to fill these gaps as well. And at our next board meeting, we hope, or one coming up, the board will also engage with Dr. Jane Philpott, who is chairing the Ontario Primary Care Action Team. I've read her book. I'm quite hopeful in terms of her approach and her understanding of healthcare and to help get our province back on track. So I'm very hopeful of her appointment there and look forward to our Roma board meeting with her. The Minister Calandra committed to meeting with the board quarterly to share ideas and set feedback. The board will also use the opportunity to seek minister support with his cabinet colleagues on key rural issues. So although we're only meeting with the Ministry of Lisa Thompson of Rural, we'll also be meeting with Minister Calandra as well on a regular basis. So hopefully the communications will come through and that rural understanding of the uniqueness will start to filter through the provincial agenda. Of course, the other issue that we raised was the OPP relief. In the works, the board discussed concerns related to the significant and unexpected municipal OPP rate and the fees increases coming up in the 2025, which we'll be struggling with their budget soon. So let's hope there's some quick action on that. And on behalf of Roma and AMO Policy is engaged in the Minister of the Solicitor General to work through approvals for the financial support for municipalities to manage the increase. Additional information is expected over the next few weeks, so hopefully we'll have an update on that before we get into the finalizing of our budget. And then also, of course, was the support for managing the broadband projects. As internal service providers work to meet the government's 2025 broadband goals, AMO and Roma are working to support the municipal sector. And how do we get this done? Roma board approved a request from AMO staff to seek backstop funding from the province. So if an ISP saddles or the municipality with unfair or reasonable costs and tries to put this infrastructure forward, we need to get that cost covered by the province. So we're working on that sort of initiative. AMO will host a webinar by the end of the year to help municipal staff understand how navigation of the relationship with internet service providers using a template from the municipal access agreement. And this agreement outlines essential terms and conditions that are reasonable for municipalities to seek from ISP installing broadband in their roadways. So hopefully if there's any other additional costs to us, and our planners will be on top of that, that we will have something to say to the province, we can't absorb these additional costs, you have to take this on. And so that is being put forward by the Ministry of Infrastructure, working with the Eastern Ontario Regional Network. So that's kind of the highlights of that meeting. We got the usual policy updates and work being done, which is also emailed, I think, to all the councillors across the province as well. So that's about it from Roman. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item is this is the first Integrity Commissioner's report and recommendation in Township of Minden Hills. And it's essential to acknowledge the importance of the report and to follow proper procedures to address the report before council and public. Just to remind everybody, each of the 444 municipalities in Ontario must appoint an integrity commissioner. This integrity commissioner is an independent third party, usually a lawyer, but not necessarily so, who is to work with the municipality to on issues related to both provincial laws and municipal bylaws, mostly relating to conflict of interest and code of conduct. They are available to councillors to advise them ahead of time, particularly probably used most of all with the conflict of interest. But they also have a situation, or also part of their task is to handle any investigations, because anybody is allowed to make a complaint to the Integrity Commissioner. The Integrity Commissioner then uses their judgment to decide whether the complaint is frivolous or is worthy of investigation. They then handle the investigation, and they may or may not make a recommendation to the council. When a recommendation is made to council, we must bring this forward at the earliest possible open council meeting. So there's a number of reasons for this, and in order to respect the process, to be transparent, and to be fair to both the public, the complainant, and counselors, we went out and sought legal advice to make sure that we handle this process in according to our legal obligations, and also to make sure that we handle this correctly. In this instance, there is no pecuniary interest associated with the report. Therefore, Councillor McKelvey did not have to declare a pecuniary conflict earlier in the meeting. In order that we handle this properly, and again with legal advice, we're going to do it in this manner. I'm going to give every counselor the opportunity to comment if they so desire. Now, these comments must only be related to the recommendation that is made by the Integrity Commissioner. We're not going to be, reopening the investigation or talking about the investigation in any other way. We are only to be talking about the recommendation being made by the Integrity Commissioner. So everybody will have the opportunity to speak, and then we will read the motion and vote on it. In order that we do not, have any issues coming forward after this meeting, I'm going to give Councillor McKelvey the opportunity to speak first, because if she was to speak after other people, somebody may say that she was taking part in a debate or something like that, and that's not what's happening. So, Councillor McKelvey, do you have a wish to make a comment? Go ahead.
I believe just from a procedure standpoint, council first has to vote to accept the report as information,
That,
and then go on to decide whether or not they want to deal with the recommendation.
we will vote
So,
after everybody has an opportunity to comment.
okay. I wasn't expecting it this way, so my understanding is that there's two separate votes here, so. And I don't know if the clerk or CIA want to speak to that.
Well, that is our legal, based on our legal advice, that's how I'm proceeding. So do you wish to make a comment about the recommendation?
I feel that I have not violated the code of conduct. I did what any other member of council has been asked to do and investigate a complaint that came in. So, and I sent that information off to staff. But again, I'm going to remind you that I believe this is a two-step process. So I don't know why we're not allowing our clerk to speak to that.
We've already had discussions with the clerk and with our lawyers, and this
As
is the
did I.
recommendation that I have.
Okay.
That's the end of your comment?
Sure.
Okay, we will go around. Everybody will have the opportunity to comment. Deputy Mayor Schell, would you like to make a comment?
I have no comment.
Councillor Saini, do you have any comment?
No comment.
Councillor Sisson, do you have a comment?
I think we're all guilty of this sooner or later. I mean, I've had people call me and I pass it on. I think
We're only
this is-
talking about the recommendations, so we're not
I think
talking
it's
about
blown away out of proportion myself.
Councillor Ingram.
I have no intention of agreeing with the recommendation.
No
Councillor
comment.
Hennessy, no comment. All right, would you please read the resolution?
Moved by Deputy Mayor Shell, seconded by Councilor Hannison, that council receives the Integrity Commissioner's report dated November 12th, 2024 regarding a code of conduct complaint, and that council accepts the Integrity Commissioner's recommendation to issue a letter of reprimand to a member of council, and that council directs staff to bring forward the draft letter to the next regular meeting for council approval.
All those in favor? That is defeated.
Yeah.
Please read the next resolution.
I'll need a mover and a seconder to accept the commissioner's report.
So we need a mover and seconder to receive the report. Councilor Ingram, Councilor Sisson.
Moved by Councilor Ingram, seconded by Councilor Sisson, that council receives the Integrity Commissioner's report dated November 12th, 2024 regarding a code of conduct complaint, and that council acknowledges the recommendation to issue a letter of reprimand to the member of council, however, is only prepared to receive the report today as information.
All those in favor? Could you hold your hand up a little higher? That is not received. Please
Would you
read.
like me to read the motion again, council?
This is to receive the report, which we must do at some point.
Moved by Councilor Ingram, seconded by Councilor Sisson, that council receives the Integrity Commissioner's report dated November 12th, 2024 regarding a code of conduct complaint, and that council acknowledges the recommendation in the to issue a letter of reprimand to the member of council, however, is only prepared to receive the report today as information. So you're acknowledging that there is a recommendation. However, you're only going to receive the report as information, and you will not be issuing a letter.
All those in favor? Deputy Mayor Shell.
Perhaps the clerk could explain to council who are not voting for this, what the consequence would be if we don't, and what the next step has to be then, please. Maybe there's,
We have to accept the report. We've received the report for the Integrity Commissioner. We don't have to accept the recommendation that's before us today. However, we do have to receive the report.
Councilor Ingram.
Why can't we just say that exactly in the resolution?
This is council's resolution. If you wish me to amend it, we are
Just
happy to do
asking a
so.
question,
Yeah.
simply. That's all.
Yeah, we're happy to do.
We can then amend the resolution, but the resolution just basically states that yes.
Recommendation mentioned that. Accepting the report.
If I may.
Go ahead. Yep.
So, council, I'm happy to take out that last line, and just receive the Integrity Commissioner's report with the date in it as information. I'll read it. I'll read you the line again if that's helpful.
Go ahead.
Okay. The council receives the Integrity Commissioner's report dated November 12th, 2024 regarding a code of conduct complaint as information.
All those in favor? That is carried. All right, we had a couple of other items of correspondence. This is all part of the consent resolution, but we had items 11.2 to 11.5, and I think 11.2 and 11.4 have been pulled out for further discussion. Do you want to read the consent resolution for the others?
Moved by Councilor McKelvey, seconded by Councilor Saney, that council directs the following correspondence and communication items be pulled forward for discussion. 11.2, Township of Aurora request the redistribution of the provincial land transfer tax and GST to municipalities for sustainable infrastructure funding. and 11.4 U-Links, call for community-based research projects for winter 2025.
All those in favor? That is carried. So now we go back to 11.2.
Actually, we just have to approve the remaining items and then
I
as
thought we just-
information.
Okay. Go ahead.
Moved by Counselor McKelvey, seconded by Counselor Saney, that council receives correspondence items 11.3 and 11.5 as information.
All those in favor? That is carried. Now can I go to 11.2? Thank you. Okay, we go to 11.2, which is a motion made by the Township of Aurora requesting the redistribution of the provincial land transfer tax and GST to municipalities for sustainable infrastructures finding. This, I think it should be funding. So this is an issue that's being discussed at a number of different levels across Ontario by various groups, including AMO and the Warden's Caucus and so on and so forth. You know, we have I guess a process of collecting our funding, and in our case, it's well over 70% of all of our funding comes from municipal taxes. And the rules haven't really changed since 1840. So, you know, there's an awful lot of precedents, but, you know, we no longer live in the world of 1840. And, you know, as we finish all these asset management plans in the various communities, we're really finding what that infrastructure gap is and how much pressure is put upon us to be able to fund the projects that we need to fund to keep these municipalities or our municipalities going. The government, and by the government, I mean the senior levels of government, seem to have no trouble in downloading various and sundry responsibilities to us, and they don't generally compensate us for taking work that they used to do and moving it to our level. So the idea is to have an open discussion on whether or not we could accept part of the provincial land transfer tax. Now, I'm not really certain how much that helps us in rural communities, because our land transfer taxes are certainly a lot less than a municipality like Markham or wherever, where the land is a lot more expensive, but it would help. And then the idea of perhaps part of the GST, whether it be the GST on building materials or be a more general part of the GST to come to us, is an interesting thing. And I think the idea here is just to have that open discussion and make sure that our voices are heard also at the provincial level to do this. Anybody else would like to comment on this? I know it was Councillor Saney.
Yeah, I support this. I just would like to get an idea of what that would look like for municipality at some point. I know we wouldn't have those numbers today, but I would like to see that particularly for Minden. And the GST is something that's been the long term, as you know, in terms of increasing the GST even, or HST 1% would really help municipalities across the board. And it's not a regressive kind of tax. If they do it that way, you have to spend sometimes to get it. So I think this is on the right track, and hopefully we can get some more details on how it would affect Minden particularly, or Haliburton County later. Thank you.
So I guess the idea, sorry, did you want to?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, sorry. Just when there is a want for details, I don't know that we have math fleshed out. I think we're just making a recommendation, but I'm not sure, just to Councillor Saney's point, I'm not sure how we would bring back an impact to Minden at this point.
I do think that there's at least some work being done at the county on this. So, we might have to do an estimate for the Minden portion of it, but if we even had the county part, we would at least get, have something. But I think the idea is to try to get, we've got something here that Aurora has put together, is the idea to, put together our own motion of saying, help us here, government, give us, at least have the discussion to see if there's a way that we can, get some of this money. Because you're downloading services to us. Councilor McKelvey?
So as far as I can tell, we're being asked to deal with this correspondence that's on the agenda right now, not something else. So I'm just trying to figure what, like, as far as land transfer tax, I don't even know that the township or the county can find that out. Like, that's,
Okay.
So are you asking us to consider supporting this resolution? Or are you asking us to do some resolution of our own? I thought I heard you say.
I would think that we would want to modify this one slightly. But, and
I'd be prepared to just support this resolution.
I think that's fine. Councilor Johansson? You good with that? All right.
Okay, so I had a mover of Councilor Ingram and seconded by Councilor Johansson for the Minden Hills resolution. Same movers and seconders, is that?
Go ahead.
So did you have a different resolution? Sorry, I'm just.
I just mimicked what the town of Aurora had put forward. I just mimicked it.
Oh, I get it. Okay, no, I would just
Yes.
want to,
Which is what other
personally, I just think we
municipalities are
would
doing.
just support their efforts here, but.
Right.
Yeah, and that's okay. We can do that. Sorry. So my question is, same mover and seconder, is that
I'm not
Is
sure
that
who
okay?
they were, so
Councilor Ingram and Councilor Johannes?
you good with that?
Okay. Thank you. Sorry. Moved by Councilor Ingram, seconded by Councilor Yannison, that council receives the Township of Aurora's resolution, and further that the council of the Township of Minden Hills support the town of Aurora's resolution request for redistribution of the provincial land transfer tax and GST to municipalities for sustainable infrastructure funding.
All those in favor? That is carried. All right. Moving on to 11.4. Is that Councilor McKelvey? Did you bring that?
I had suggested that the U-Links have put out looking for projects
Yep.
and that the zoning bylaw consolidation would probably be a good project for them to do. Now, at the last budget meeting, we had information coming through digitally that said that's not what they were going to be able to do, but you said they could. So perhaps you could speak to it,
Yeah,
Mr. Mayor.
There was a board meeting. There was a board meeting of U-Links on Monday of this week. So what happens is that there was a notice sent out for request for proposals. There are projects that are ongoing at U-Links. that, multi-year projects. And so the process is that we get any requests that come from the, anywhere in Halliburton County. And then we go to the various departments in Trent University to find out if there is a student that is A, capable, and B, willing, and a professor willing to sponsor them to take on the project. Right now, there were 9 projects kind of, I would say, in this category that had already been requested. I told them that they could expect that there could be more from Minden in the immediate future. Aside from that, there's another, I think, another 58 projects that are currently being handled through ULinks. But so if they can find the right student and the right professor, there's virtually anything that they can do if the project can be defined, and if the project is of a size that it could be handled by a student. Sorry to make it more complicated, but some of these are undergraduate student and some of the projects are with graduate students. If it's a graduate student, it doesn't necessarily fall in one school year. They tend to be working over a longer period of time. So they're willing to accept any request. Councillor Samey?
It's something that's been on my mind, but probably would need a little more discussion before it is a proposal here. But that is the downloading of services that we like to think of as universal. And we've seen, and I'm going to use housing as an example, from the federal government to the provincial government to the municipalities. And what we always leave out in that scenario is when those 3 levels of governance don't work, we download it to volunteers and service organizations. And it would be interesting just to see some graphs of that kind of downloading that has gone on. And then all of a sudden, when we just don't have anything at the local level, we see our service organizations, golf tournaments as a big example of providing funding for the health services. I mean, we're seeing it downloaded, what we like to think of as universal care in Canada. We're seeing it downloaded to service organizations doing golf tournaments and fundraisers and auctions to support our hospitals. So I think it'd be interesting. It's a high level sort of approach. So it would be kind of, some pretty maybe basic statistics that a student could do without too much guidance, just to know where those stats are. I think it would just be an interesting exploration. Thank you.
And it might be something that needs to be fleshed out a bit more before we can. Councillor McKelvey?
I just think we have ULinks in this community and we should not only support them, but take advantage of that service.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I need staff to tell me, do we want to consider an application to ULinks to do the consolidation of the zoning bylaw and official plan? We have to get this done. It slows down everything.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and I'll start and then invite our manager of planning. I absolutely concur with Councillor McKelvey on the importance of consolidating our planning documents. We have talked at a senior management level about the importance of ULinks. We want to be key partners with them. We do not see the consolidation of our documents as the one to partner with ULinks. I think I had mentioned previously, we have searched post-secondary educational groups that have planning as part of their program. We've been in discussions, preliminary discussions with 2. So I think there's a really important partnership for us in this community with ULinks. I'm just not sure that this is, in fact, I don't think this is the project to take them. Thank you.
So just to clarify, ULinks is not only associated with Trent University. There's also been, recently been some work with University of Guelph, and obviously there's work with Fleming College also, but we've also been talking to other universities. And
And through you, Mr. Mayor, I mean, I'm happy to have those offline conversations. In this particular case, we were looking at two post-secondaries that potentially we can make a link with and have planning students and things for other items in addition to this body of work.
there are comments? So what is a resolution?
Excuse me, through you, Mr. Mayor, I just have it to receive it as information. Just waiting for some direction on any further amendment.
All right, Councillor Ingram?
Just wondering, like, do we have time to even do this? It's deadline's tomorrow.
I think I think that there could be some flexibility on behalf of ULinks to say if we said, hey, we want to have a discussion with you on this too.
Fair enough.
Ms. Doherty.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I just want to confirm, I did reach out to ULinks in order to discuss opportunities with them for this particular call for projects. They're looking for more research-based questions, and our needs are not research-based, but I have reached out with them to discuss opportunities.
Okay, Councillor Saini?
Yes, back to that discussion about the passing down, is that something that anybody else on council would see would be useful for any particular reason as we try to renegotiate, for example, the municipal support for basic services? And would that be a useful graph to show and also to recognize the community that's carrying a lot of the load at this point? Would that kind of overview graph be something the rest of the council would be interesting in seeing, just to kind of put our foot in the door and name it, or not? And maybe this isn't the right time to think it through. Thank you.
I think the information would be good to have. I'm not necessarily sure that Trent has the programs that would align with that. But again, I think it's something that should be fleshed out over, and have preliminary discussions with them, but not necessarily look at it as a project that starts right now in this term. There's a winter term and summer terms and so on. So, all right. So I think, yep. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
So I just want to ask then that we get information back on how we are going to get the zoning bylaw and official plan updated, because this is costing unbelievable amount of staff time. Every time you get an application or a bylaw compliance request, you must be spending hours is probably an exaggeration, but in some cases it could be. Trying to figure out what these properties are even zoned, because we have not consolidated this document in years, not just months, years. Like several terms of council. So like this really has to be done to become efficient. So if we don't want to use ULinks, we have to do something to get that done. I personally still feel ULinks would be able to do this, but if that's not the case, I'd like to see could we just ask staff come back to us and tell us, I know you've been talking to other groups, but is it happening? Is it our boots on the ground here to do this?
Mr. Mayor, in the new year, we can provide council with further details.
Early in the new year. Okay. Please read the resolution. Yep.
Moved by Councillor Saini, seconded by Councillor McKelvey, that council receives correspondence from ULink Center for Community-Based Research seeking research projects for the winter 2025 as information.
All those in favor? That is carried. Now we start with departmental reports, and Ms. Kosh, you're going to talk to us about blue box changes. I read the report and I'm not smarter than when I started, so I hope you'll at least be able to clarify what it all means.
Okay, good morning, council, and through the chair. So the purpose of this report is to explain how the transition of the provincial Blue Box program to full producer responsibility affects Blue Box services to non-eligible sources. The 2021 Blue Box regulation states that entities must be serviced by producers during the transition period and post-transition period. Blue Box sources have been categorized into eligible and non-eligible. Eligible Blue Box sources to be serviced are residential homes, multi-residential buildings, elementary and secondary schools, some long-term care and retirement homes, and some public spaces. Under the regulation, producers have no legal obligation to collect Blue Box material from non-eligible sources, and these include businesses, industrial, and commercial properties. Attachment 1 of my report is a guide that helps illustrate what is actually considered a non-eligible source. Minden Hills has always paid the cost to manage, haul, and process non-eligible Blue Box materials. Under the historical Blue Box program and during the transition period, communities were permitted to commingle eligible and non-eligible Blue Box material. Costs to provide service to non-eligible Blue Box sources have been covered by fees or the property taxes. Starting October 1st of this year, Minden Hills, which is the Minden Hills transition date, the costs for managing eligible Blue Box materials are actually covered by the producers of the product. So we're no longer paying for the hauling and processing. Starting January 1st of 2026, Circular Materials will no longer permit their contractors to collect Blue Box materials from non-eligible sources. Therefore, Minden Hills will need to decide how to manage the Blue Box materials generated by non-eligible sources. Whatever option council approves will be in place January 1st, 2026 and onward. Staff are recommending option 2, in addition to accepting non-eligible Blue Box materials at the Scotchline landfill only. This will eliminate the need for additional Blue Box collection bins at all waste disposal sites in order to comply with separating non-eligible Blue Box material from eligible Blue Box material. So in summary, this is a very complex regulation, and municipalities province-wide have expressed concerns about non-eligible Blue Box sources as outlined in the regulation. We have advocated to amend the regulation to no longer make a distinction between eligible and non-eligible Blue Box materials. At the end of the day, a pop bottle is a pop bottle, regardless of being consumed at home or at work. So to provide further context, if this pop bottle is consumed at home, it can go in our regular Blue Box program. It's considered eligible. If I consume this pop bottle at work, it is no longer allowed to go into the Blue Box program and is considered a non-eligible source or material. So although it seems pretty straightforward, it is not. So I know it's complex, but hopefully I've been able to outline it as best as possible, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
So if I had a restaurant or pop stand in downtown Minden, and I collected, very carefully collected all of my Blue Box materials so that it was properly sorted and so on. If I came to the Scotch Line, there's a possibility Scotch Line can say, we're not accepting this at all.
So it depends. So through the chair, it depends on where it was generated. So if you are a business, then
Yeah.
yes. So there will be some work from our frontline staff that will be required to determine where the source came from, if it's eligible or non-eligible, in order to properly direct them to the right area to dispose of their Blue Box.
Okay, and so let us say that in our wisdom and glory, we decide that we're going to accept this, but we're going to charge the private business for this bag of empty bottles. So then does it just go into the common pile of empty bottles that we've been collecting from residential properties?
So through the chair, no, it would have to go into the non-eligible bin that is designated for simply just non-eligible source Blue Box material.
And so when the truck or whatever comes along to haul these empty pop bottles off to the recycling center, they have to collect 2 bins as opposed to 1?
So through the chair, it would have to be a separate contract. So right now, Circular Materials has contracts with contractors to collect eligible Blue Box material on their behalf. So that is a separate contract. They will come in, pick it up, and there's no charge to the township for the eligible blue box material. If the township decides to collect or accept non-eligible blue box material, we will have to have our own separate contract that we manage and pay to manage for the hauling and processing of blue box material for non-eligible sources.
Okay, so just so I can actually put it out there and state the ridiculous, we would have two bins, one with the pop bottle A, which came from a residence, and B, a bin filled with pop bottle B, which is exactly the same, but it was collected from a business. And then two separate trucks would come to our facility under two separate contracts to haul these to the same disposal or recycling site.
Through the chair, that is correct.
I,
Please remember, I didn't make this, this rule.
there's an expression of whom the gods deem to destroy, they first drive mad. And I think that the provincial government is the gods in this case. Councillor McKelvey.
If ever there was a need to have a delegation with a minister at a conference, this might be the one that we would want to jump onto. It is the most ridiculous legislation I've ever seen. But as far as what we're being asked is, we need to make a decision, and I want to ask some information as far as there's this 3%, I think it was, that they're charging back to us right now for commercial. Was it 3? Sorry.
So through the chair to the council member, yes, that's correct. So during the transition period, which October 1st for Minden Hills until the end of 2025, we have a non-eligible percentage that has been determined through impact data as confirmed through circular materials and the regulation. So there was a couple of options to determine what our non-eligible source rate would be. For small rural municipalities, the easiest way to calculate that was through impact data. And that's what was done. And that is what our determined non-eligible rate is. That is only applicable during the transition period. So right now we get money monthly from circular materials for them to operate the Blue Box program at our sites. They take off that 3.52% based on the tonnage collected, and that's assumed to be non-eligible sources.
Councillor McKelvey.
So prior to this ridiculous legislation, we were paying for recycling to be collected and shipped out for everybody in an effort to keep it out of our landfill. Then we've gone into this one where we're just getting a deduction of 3.52, which we sort of need to know what that is. So we're still at this point paying for everybody. Some of it's through producer responsibility, some of it's through us for the commercial or the non-eligible. But then we get to this point where this is over at the 1st of 26. And we are faced with saying, do we want to pay for that? But we really are already paying for it. We just don't know if we want to continue paying for it. We're paying it right now at the 3.52 clawback, basically. Like as far as I'm concerned, I would like to know a little bit more information. I know you've got in here, it could be in excess of 150,000, but I don't know what the 3.52 is. So, and it's probably too early, like you've probably only had 1 month to even know what that is. And then in the summer, it'll be a lot more and that sort of thing.
So through the chair to the council member, so our tonnage varies month over month. So we have a standard amount in accordance with the agreement with circular materials that we get paid monthly. I believe it was $9,062 a month plus HST. However, there are deductions, which one deduction is the 3.52%, and then there's also fuel and CPI deductions. So off the top of my head, for the month of October, I believe it was $10,400 and change approximately that we received for the Blue Box program from Circular Materials. So yes, I guess the 3.52%, we are essentially, I don't know if we're paying for it, we're just it's being deducted from our monthly amount that we receive.
Councillor Ingram?
Through the chair. Ah. Somebody else go.
Please take a pause. Councillor Ingram. Councillor McKelvey.
So some of these costs, we're talking about need for additional blue box collection bins. Like we have some nice new ones up there at Scotch Line I see just arrived. Is that through this whole, somebody else buy those?
So through the chair to the council member, yes, that's correct. So those bins are provided by Waste Connections, who's the contractor with Circular Materials.
Okay.
So we no longer have to use our bins for the collection of blue box material. The contractor supplies the bins.
Okay, so if we were to continue using our bins then for the commercial and non-eligible, we're really not having to buy more. We already have them.
Through the chair, that's correct. We do use our bins for garbage as well.
Right.
And we do use them for scrap metal, depending on the contractor for scrap metal. Right now, our contractor is supplying some of their bins for scrap metal. So as of right now, our current situation, then yes, we have available bins to collect non-eligible blue box material.
Okay, sorry. Back to my pop stand because I'm very interested whether I can use this in my retirement. But so if I have garbage, forget about the recycles that I generate at my pop stand and I bring it into Scotch Line, what do you charge me for that garbage?
So through the chair, it would be a little tiny square off of your waste card currently for your garbage. So garbage is separate than the blue box material.
Yes, no, I understand that, but I'm not talking about my home garbage. I'm talking about the garbage that comes from my pop stand that I have in the parking lot outside the city hall.
So through the chair, you would still get your waste card and have your garbage bag allotment that you would be able to use. So commercial properties in Minden Hills still get a waste disposal card.
So so theoretically, I'm paying my taxes on my pop stand. And so I'm getting, assuming I don't use more than the 156 bags, I'm paying nothing for my garbage.
Through the chair, that's correct. You get your waste card with your annual allotment, and that's part of your property tax.
And if I do my duty and I separate my recyclables from my garbage, I pay for the recyclables under these new rules. That's our decision, but that's the recommendation. But, so it might encourage me to move all the recyclables into my garbage because I'm not paying for that.
So through the chair, I absolutely agree with you, and that's some of the flaws in the regulation. But I think that's where we have our local level bylaws and policies where we can help enforce that by saying that, there can be no blue box recycling in the garbage unless there's a certain contamination threshold. There are ways around that. But that is some of the fear that has been brought forward to the ministry to say that, it's going to fill up our landfill space that is already in limited supply.
Councilor Ingram, me. Okay.
Thank you. Through the chair. The 3.5% we pay right now for non-eligible material for commercial users, right?
So through the chair to the council member, that's correct.
Okay.
So it was based on the impact data, so certain property codes.
Yep.
So whether or not those properties are actually bringing their blue box material to the landfill is another question that we don't know.
I guess what I'm wondering, because we're going to have to do something as you've indicated in your report. I'm wondering if the 3.5 that we pay the non-recyclable, or that we're nailed on, will cover the cost if we did it with another customer, or if it would be cheaper to just continue doing that. You follow me? Instead of having two contracts, ask the contractor if they would accept it.
So through the chair to the council member, that's definitely an option, but we have our procurement policy as well, like the threshold. So depending on what the amount would be,
Yeah.
like I could definitely approach Waste Connections and ask them, will you accept our non-eligibles and collect it separately?
Right.
But they're still gonna bill us for the hauling and the processing of
Absolutely,
that
but
material.
you don't have a second contract, correct?
We wouldn't have a second contract. So the contract that is currently with Waste Connections right now is not with Waste Connections in the township. It is with Waste Connections and Circular
Oh,
Materials.
okay. Okay, it's still with them. Right. Okay, thank you.
Just before I get to you, Counselor says, when do we have to decide all this?
So through the chair, sooner than later would be my preference. So starting January 1st, 2026, we can no longer collect the non-eligibles with our eligibles right now. So in fairness for the non-eligible sources within the township, I would like to be able to start working with them ahead of time to
Right.
determine what they currently do.
But it's not like this week sort of thing. We have to decide.
No, not this week.
Counselor Sisson first.
I just like to, to say I support option one. I mean, these people pay enough taxes already without adding more to taking garbage to the dump or recycling to the dump. I just can't see charging people to take that to the dump.
Counselor McKelvey?
I also don't want to start charging the business people. I mean, they're struggling enough as it is. I think there's almost like three things here that I'd like to know, but one is I don't want to charge the business people. The other thing that is being proposed here is that we keep all of it coming to one landfill site. So obviously it would be Scotch Line. I think council needs to think about what impact that would have. Clearly, most of our businesses are in Minden area, but there's others that aren't. So how much inconvenience are we doing there? And then how much of this is going to end up in the garbage, no matter how much you try to enforce it. So I would also like to know what the other townships are doing, because if we all collectively went out to tender for a hauler, it would be more advantageous to them if we're all doing it. So I just wondered, do you know what the other townships are doing?
So through the chair to the council member, I don't believe the other townships have made a decision at this time. I haven't received any other updates to say otherwise. So that's definitely an option that we would look at. I do know that in previous contracts, because of the geographics of the county as a whole, some contractors are reluctant to go, to the Highlands East area. So Minden does have an advantage with our location and the proximity to some of the major highways, but that's definitely something that we would look at.
Yeah, I think it's there's tough calls. Yeah, you don't want to charge the businesses more, but at the same time, you don't want the local residential people to have to be subsidizing the businesses to a great extent. I mean, I think we need a little bit more information, a little bit more analysis on this. I don't disagree with your recommendation at this point necessarily, but I would like to have it fleshed out a little bit more. I understand it a lot more than I did before you got up there, but there's still a lot to mull over, I think. Madam CAO?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just a couple of points of clarification. When we're asking about timelines, January 1 of 2026 sounds like a long time away, but in this sector, not only to be fair to our businesses, but if we were to contract somebody, they need a good runway to line things up. So just, I'm fine if we have some follow-up information, but I don't think it can go too far into 2025. I guess for Ms. Kosh and myself, I've written down what the other townships are doing. I'm just want to be clear on what the follow-up information is that council is looking for. And part of it is you have your guru who understands the industry, who's trying to explain it to all of us. So what are the 3 or 4 things that would help council with the decision on the options? Thank you.
I'll take the first stab. Councillor McKelvey, you can go. From my perspective, what I would like to know, and I agree with the timing. It would be nice to wrap this up before the end of the first quarter. Okay, and I mean, totally wrap it up, but I guess I would like to know, sort of the volumes that we're talking about and the amount of dollars in total, and then what would it cost a commercial business? If it's a few bucks, we got to be in a situation where we recognize we have a whole administrative side of handling all this, and if it's for the sake of a few dollars, it's not worth it. So I'd like to know what the what the costs are, what the impact would be on the commercial folks, and an idea of what would it cost to have somebody come up here and take the separate bin and haul it away and so on. And I guess from my perspective, I don't necessarily, with all due respect to Algonquin Highlands and Highlands East, I'm more concerned with Dysart and we are doing, because we're right up the road from one another and have similar type town commercial type of environments. I know this is huge for certain businesses like the grocery stores and things like that, and for other people it won't matter at all, but I just need to have it fleshed out a bit more.
So through the chair, Paul, I understand what you're looking for sure. The only challenge is that we don't currently have scale. So to know the volumes of what's coming in, that would be difficult to know exactly, and what that would relate to in dollars. So I have provided a high level estimate based on what we were previously paying to our transition date, but until we know the volumes, you're absolutely correct. We don't know exactly what that dollar amount would look like, and we won't know until we issue an RFP and get some submissions to know, because it really just depends on which contractor is going to bid and where it's being hauled to, because then there's the hauling costs. So I can appreciate council wanting to have all of that information before making a decision. It's just a difficult thing to provide at this time.
You'll have to give some estimates and ranges or something. Councillor McKelvey first, and then.
So just a reminder that our landfill costs are gone down significantly because of this whole residential blue box program, where we're no longer paying that. So we are going to see a huge drop in our costs, and that can help compensate for what we might see as an expense for the commercial part, but we've already had that expense in our budget. So I just want to make sure everybody realizes that maybe it might be more because they're not going to haul as much, but they don't have to come as often either. So
Sorry, did you want to comment?
So through the chair to the council member, just to that point, so you're right, we're not going to have the hauling and processing costs for the blue box material, but we are no longer getting blue box funding, grant funding for blue box material either, because it's no longer our material. So in the big picture, they have essentially, it's been a wash compared to what we were getting for blue box funding in comparison to the hauling and processing of the blue box material.
Okay. Councillor Ingram.
Through the chair, Chelsea, I wouldn't mind you looking into if it's feasible, and it all depends on the amounts, like you said, if we can haul it ourselves, depending on where it's going. I wouldn't mind seeing the number on it, just for curiosity's sake. Yeah, we do. I was just
well,
curious.
That's something else to be, if it's at all feasible, we can do that. Councillor Saney.
Yes, thinking and building on that point as well. I know the markets go up and down, like we've seen cardboard really go up and down. So it's really, I know that your crystal ball might be overloaded right now, but that's going to be a big factor too, and what our costs are going to be, and if we can get someone else to haul this, or if we do it in-house. So how does that affect this plan too? I'd like to see if there's a change in market for recyclables, because we're really in an area that we can't predict the future of the economics of this at this point. But if we get some kind of indication of what might happen, that would be helpful too.
maybe somebody has determined they have a surplus and has turned into Scotch Line an easy button that you can you know, resurrect to help you out with this, because this is one of the most convoluted things that government has done in a long time. And I respect where they're going, but man, this, the relative impact on a small community like ours is, just in administrative costs and so on is absurd. So do you have an idea of, we'd like more? We'd like you to make this crystal clear. No matter.
Through the chair, I'm going to go buy a crystal ball.
Okay, good thinking. See if you can recycle one,
Yeah.
please.
So through the chair, did you want these requests to report back on within the resolution, or? Okay, I've got them here. Okay. So for now then, Deputy Mayor Shell and Councillor McKelvey will just be receiving this as information, and that council directs staff to report back at a future meeting. Are
Okay.
you comfortable with that, Matt?
Yep.
Okay. Moved by Deputy Mayor Shell, seconded by Councillor McKelvey, that council receives report 2415, Blue Box Program changes to non-eligible sources as information. And further that council directs staff to report back at a future meeting.
All those in favor? Is carried. Mr. Timmons, I think Ms. Gosh is willing to tag you into the ring, so. Whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mayor Carter. Just to clarify before we get going, if you don't finish that bottle of Coke before you get home, you're gonna have to cut it in half.
I'll bring
So
it home with me.
I saw you drinking it here. You can't take it home. So before you have our monthly report, not very exciting, which is pretty good for monthly reports. When they get exciting, it means things are going off the rails. We've already heard a bit about the obviously some changes on the landfill side of things. One thing to point out, just a safety aspect of the site there with the safety bollards. Anybody going up to Scotch Line will notice we've put some nice yellow safety bollards up on the garbage bin area. That's for everybody's safety, to give a vehicle-free zone for anybody on foot. So that's for our staff and for the public as well. On the road side, we've completed some more brushing in town. Golf Course Road, Panorama Park was fairly overgrown, so we got that cleaned up, and Newcastle Street as well. We did some ditch and shoulder stabilization on Scotch Line Road that was sort of left over from the project there. Health and safety meetings continuing, as well as our joint health and safety committee has been moving forward. And then just a final note, winter is upon us. We had our trucks out for the first time earlier this week, and we will be out again, of course, with the snow coming. We're prepared. We'll be out there. The line is always, patience with the trucks, planning for extra time getting to work for the public and staff alike. If you know there's gonna be snow, our staff are out there. We always say somebody's gonna be first, somebody's gonna be last, right? So we're out there doing our routes, and our guys are ready, and they'll be ready to go. Short and sweet. Any comments on monthly report?
Councillor Johansson first.
I'm wondering if you can help me out. I think you call it brushing, but I have a name for it. It's called lawnmower on steroids. What's going on at the moment? Is there a cleanup? Like the machine is just hacking the trees, which I understand that what they're doing, but they're leaving it all over the roads. It's could be a liability. I mean, the pieces are the size of what a beaver would chomp on. Yesterday I came home at night and the roads were very icy, and the debris was everywhere. When I came out this morning, I was absolutely shocked at what he has taken down. I mean, it looks like a storm's gone through. But I just for the cleanup really is what I'm concerned about.
Yeah, through the chair, that's noted. We did have that come up a couple weeks ago as well. We can certainly work on the cleanup. It does become a little bit more difficult when we're in town, because when we're out sort of in the more rural parts, a lot of that stays in the ditches, stays out of the way. Certainly roadways, we will be more aware of that in the future.
That was going to be my comment as well, because when Newcastle was done a couple of weeks ago, there were chunks out into the intersection. I thought there'd been a car accident and it was pieces off a vehicle. They were that large that people were like driving around them. So just something to consider, as Councillor Johannesson has said, it could become a liability.
Our contractor does this, correct? I mean, is that part of their responsibility, or how does that work?
It certainly could be. We can definitely have a conversation with them, a little bit of cleanup, but we also have staff that can get out there if we have to do a bit of a cleanup as well. So.
Councillor McKelvey?
I too have got concerns about the brushing and the lack of cleanup after. Like we need to follow them with the backhoe and the broom, really, to get this off. I had a lot of complaints and concerns from a safety standpoint on the using a mechanical brusher in town. Newcastle, Invergordon, people felt that like their houses were close to where this debris was landing. So I don't know, just on a go forward, if we want to use such a large mechanical brusher in the village.
Through the chair, very well noted. We'll look at it. I mean, that'll be it for this season. But coming into next year, we will make some different work procedures in certain areas if required.
Councillor Sisson?
Mike, I just wondered, I see the county had rented a machine and done their own roads, and they weren't near as bad as what these ones are. Is that something you might consider next year, maybe?
Certainly, we're open to any ideas. We can chat with, I can chat with my counterpart at the county, and maybe there's something we can do there for sure.
Sorry, Councillor Saini first.
Yes, just briefly, also have complaints and you know about them and you've taken care of them and that's appreciated. But I also want to just comment that the reason this is done is to make our roads safer and see the visions around corners and stuff. And so I've also gotten comments back about people appreciating the ability to see around those corners and as we get to slipperier roads and things. So it's something that we have to do environmentally. It looks terrible as well, just to see that kind of thing, but it does make our roads safer, particularly in rural areas. So thank you for that.
Councillor McKelvey?
Two things. One is the Mash Creek culverts. When are they getting done?
Through the chair, we had some issues with some species at risk in the area. So we're working through it. Realistically, at this point, it'll be likely a 2025 project at this point. We had some serious delays working with the ministry, getting anything back out of them. I'm still trying to get a few things ironed out, but I think reality is probably this time we'll be looking at 2025.
Well, that's disappointing.
It is, I agree.
They're really plugged right now, just so you know.
Through the chair, we'll obviously have to do some maintenance. At this point, we had hoped to have the new ones in, so obviously
Yeah.
we'll have to be up there
Yeah.
for the maintenance for the spring for sure, when things start flowing high again.
Just a matter of interest, for the species at risk, are they concerned? I mean, obviously you're replacing culvert with another culvert. I mean, it's somewhat the same, maybe different, slightly different size, but are they concerned about the impact of the construction, or what is the issue?
Through the chair, the issue is landing turtles right in the area. I have made all those points that it is a like with like infrastructure replacement. There are virtually no trees to be removed. From an environmental perspective, there's actually fairly limited impact. But the landing turtles are the big thing. And I will say, getting the information from the ministry and having them work with me has been difficult, and probably what has caused the issue. Had we had better response, we probably could have got the project done this year. But obviously there were some issues.
Councillor McKelvey?
And another delegation at your next
Yeah.
conference. just my last question, and I just have to understand it. I know we've had one person contact us, but there's others along the Blairhampton Road. When we did the surface treatment, for some reason, we've gone in on people's driveways. And I did go up and okay, well, maybe we replaced culverts, but it doesn't look like we did. So I don't know why why did they go in so far on people's driveways and some of which were paved?
Through the chair, it is fairly common practice to do the apron up to property, on the township side. So that's what we did. We didn't go beyond that. I have spoken with the individual and we are working it out.
But it's not just that one, just so you know, like there's a few like asphalt driveways, and I realize it's on the right of way. It's on the township's road allowance, no doubt about that. And I actually thought, okay, we must have replaced culverts, and that's why we've gone in there, but we didn't. So I'm still struggling to understand why would we go in on asphalt and take it up?
Through the chair, without seeing the condition of the asphalt prior, I mean, I just don't know off the top of my head, but there would have been a infrastructure reason there for whatever reason. We do have inspectors on site as well to help with those decisions. So I can certainly look into that. But without knowing off the top of my head the condition prior, it's hard to speak to that.
Okay, any other questions? Please read the resolution.
Moved by Councillor McKelvey, seconded by Deputy Mayor Shell, that council receives report 2418, November monthly activity report, Public Works for information.
All those in favor? It's carried. We have not ordered lunch, but there's a number of other things on the agenda. I'd like to plow through them. So let us continue. We'll start with community services. Ms. McGuigan. Whenever you're ready.
Good morning, Mayor and councilors. Well, I guess I think it's afternoon shortly. Bringing to our report 2434 activity report for the month of October. So we saw some programming happening. The On Ice board advertising campaign closed on November 1st. We had 5 businesses come on board. So we'll see their advertisements go on the rink ad, and once they get up there, we're hoping that we'll see some other businesses come forth for the season. Unfortunately, the ice skating harness, there was some blips in the install that was set for Tuesday. I have been in direct communication with the sales rep, technician, and the engineer, and they're looking for the install to be in 2 to 3 weeks. The main concern is the current brackets that are in the arena, an oversight from the engineer that they're working to correct. We hosted PA Day camp and registration open for adult and youth recreation programming for a 4-week session. We were super busy with the tree lighting, Santa Claus parade preparation, decorating the downtown, as well as Christmas in the village. And thank you to all our volunteers, counselors, and staff that came and made it such a successful event and to kick off the holiday season. We continue to do the fall cleanups in the cemeteries. Usually the fall cleanup is not as big as the spring ones. Parks and trails and boat launches were closed October 25th. In the Cultural Center, they've hosted a volunteer appreciation day for Triple HS, as well as working with their other programmings. The Burner Herzog exhibit has now closed as of November 23rd. We did do some washroom updates at the Cultural Center and the museum. So the toilets in the outdoor washrooms, as well as the inside washroom and the vanity. And then the gallery is being painted currently for the next exhibit. Again, we had a lot of volunteer help with the Halloween event in October and preparation for the Christmas of the village and getting their candy all made up. And that is pretty much it for October.
Are there any questions? All right, Councillor Ingram first.
Through the chair, do you have any idea how many students you're looking at? You're looking at probably for arena as well as all the other student programs?
Yeah, so through the chair, that was the report for the students
Oh,
for this previous summer.
Oh.
Yeah.
Mind
When
them.
Director of Finance is freaking out over the side.
Counselor Johansson?
Thank you. I'm just wondering, I know we've talked about this in the past, but I don't think I've seen it come to fruit. Volunteer awards for the public. How does that go about, or who looks after that, or what's the process?
So through the chair, I would have to come back and sit down with senior leadership to see what was done in the past.
Counselor Ingram?
Just from what I know, there used to be a barbecue in the summer at the cultural center, and they would that would allow all the volunteers that were there from the city as well as local people.
Counselor McKelvey?
Perhaps the previous members of council will help us with this, but there's a Gordon A. Monk Award that normally gets done. I don't think that's been done for quite some time. And I'm wondering if Councillor Johannesson's talking about the correspondence we received a couple of years ago about awards. We had asked that it come back in the spring so that we wouldn't miss the next year's. And it didn't happen. So I'm just wondering if it's that. Is that what you were? Yeah. So we had directed 2 years ago that that be brought back to us in the spring so that when it came up in the summer, we'd be ready to go. And that didn't happen.
Yep. Go ahead.
Are you referring to the high school bursary?
No.
No.
No, I can send it to you.
Okay.
Okay. Well, we can look.
That's not that.
Okay, we can look into that. Any other questions for community service? Counselor McKelvey?
I don't know if this is a budget question or a question for today, but there's the gate at the 12-mile cemetery is in bad shape. I sent you something about that. I don't know. Is that on a radar somewhere to have that fixed?
Yes, so through the chair, we have that on the radar for it to be in the operational for 2025. We've gone out, we've scoped out the work to do it for the timing we're looking for in April for replacement.
Okay, and if I,
Go ahead.
the only other one I wondered about was our attendance at Highlandwood and Halliburton. I just wondering the rationale for that. I know Highland Crest is here, but why would we go to Highlandwood and Halliburton?
So it's an outreach sensory program that Robert has, the program coordinator has coordinated with it, and kind of the talking of the cultural and history in that, and working with the residents in both locations.
Yeah, I think we may want to rethink that part of it. And as Councilor McKelvey says, they have a museum in Halliburton, and we all have limited resources. Any other questions? Please read the resolution.
Moved by Counselor Ingram, seconded by Counselor Johansson, that report 2434, Community Services Department Activity Report for the month of October 2024 be received for information.
All those in favor? That is carried. Moving on to summarize.
Bringing forth report 2435, summarize review. So SJ Nesbitt Memorial Arena opened during COVID of April 2021. Programs were impacted by the legislative restrictions and open and closing of the facility per government direction. These COVID restrictions continued into the 2022 programming, where for the summer ice, only the Halliburton Huskies were the only summer ice users in August. The township intended to increase and grow program offerings in building the new facility. On average, the industry standard is 3 to 4 years to realize intentional growth of the recreational programs and the community needs and services. Municipal recreation centers are developed to provide services for the community when introducing the new programs and services such as summer ice rental programs. Again, 3 to 4 years is required to build up a following, understand the true costs, revenue streams, and the community and user group requirements. The ice at the SJ Memorial Arena, Nesbitt Memorial Arena, is removed in the middle of May to the end of the June to conduct the annual maintenance of the ice plant. Ice is reinstalled for the middle of July. The township has worked with Simcoe and internal operations to develop ultimate performance of the plan. So this is working with Simcoe's staff of what the depth of the ice should be, where the temperature is to be, the rotation of the compressors, when we need to have 2 compressors on, when we're just adjusting the ice between our figure skaters to our hockey players, because they do have both preferences for the ice. So working with those so we're not overtaxing our system. The compressors are not consistently running. Only when the ice sheet temperature rises and needs to be cooled down, that is when the compressors kick on. The chart below provides an overview of the electrical charges for running SJ Nesbitt Memorial Arena at full operation, and then separating the ice plant usage in the summer months. So the below chart is we took June 2023, the hydroelectrical bill. We less this hydro standard charges, and that brought us to the electrical uses cost for the full building of $4,035. Moving down into July 2023, we took the $19,630 less the standard charges to give us the electrical usage cost of the full building at $12,642. And then we less the $4,035 from the June 23 to give us the ice plant electrical usage charges of $8,607. Moving down to August 23rd, taking the $14,802 electrical total charges on the bill, less the standard charges, to get us to the $7,252 of electrical usage costs for the full building. Then we minus the June full building cost of $4,035 to give us the cost of $3,217. Going with the ice usage in August, the gross revenue was $20,190. Comparing it to June 2024, the total electrical charges in June was $5,586, less the standard charges, bringing it to $2,589 for the full building electrical usage cost. Going to July 2024, the $15,389 less the standard charges from hydro brought us to the $7,165, and then we less the June 24 full building electrical costs to bring us to the ice plant electrical usage cost of $4,576. Moving down to August 2024, the total bill is $16,893 less the standard charges to give us our full building electrical cost usage cost of $8,274 to our electrical usage cost of the ice plant of $5,685. With our ice rental gross revenue for August 24 to $22,903. So giving us an increase from 2023 to 2024 in the gross revenue. The 2 comparable seasons noted above have been in the net positive revenue position. So for the summer of 2023, the gross revenue of $20,190, we took the total electrical cost of the ice plant. So for July 2023 and August 2023 for the $11,824, less it from our gross revenue to give us a net of $8,366. And then moving to summer 2024, the gross revenue for $22,903, our total electrical charges for the ice plant from July 24 to August 2024 of $10,261, less that from the gross to give us a net revenue of $12,642. Whether the ice is in or out over the summer, the township still has the standard charges for the hydro and includes an increase in air conditioning usage in the period. As stated, the intentional growth of a base program for recreation program usually requires 3 to 4 seasons to fully assess the success. The chart below shows the need for the community and user groups of the availability for the summer ice. So in 2023, the Minden Figure Skating Club actually skated out of AJ LaRue. And then when they heard that we would be having summer ice back in Minden for the 2024 season, they came back to our facility to complete their summer ice training. In addition to the current ice users, the township is receiving new inquiries of summer 2025 season and anticipates an increase in net ice revenue and further growth to the ice rental program. So these inquiries have started at the beginning of October, and these are coming from outlying municipalities where they might, in their hockey season, they have multiple single pad usage, but they reduce down to a certain number, so they are looking to get into ice because they have a higher demand getting into their own municipality. User groups are planning their 2025 and 2026 seasons, including their summer 2025 training and program locations. For these groups, it's important to have summer ice available at SG Nesbitt Memorial Arena, as we heard from the delegations this morning, as well as the attached memo from the Minden Figure Skating Clubs and the impact of summer ice training that has on their programming.
Questions? Councillor Sisson?
Very good report, but I'm sure that the hydro just doesn't run the arena by itself. You forgot to put staffing costs in here, propane costs for the Zamboni. There's a lot of hidden costs that are not included in this. That's all I have to say.
Councillor McKelvey?
I did a lot of research on these hydro bills when I used to work at Dysart because summer ice is very, very expensive. And the reason that the hydro standard charges also go up in July and August is because you've been put onto a peak demand fee, which is a lot higher. So the minute you put that plant on and draw that kind of demand, you automatically get put on a peak demand. So all the rates go up. And like, it's always really critical that you plan to start your plant the day after you've had a meter reading too, because if you had a meter reading on July 30th and you started your plant on July 29th, it would go back for that whole month of July, whether the peak demand was only that one day, it takes it the whole billing. So like, I've done a lot of research on this, and this whole standard hydro charges is showing is going up, but that's because we got put onto a peak demand rate as soon as you put that plant on. So, you know, I'm sure you've gone back through the bills and it shows hydro standard charges, I guess, but the reason it's going up so high is also attributable to the summer ice costs. So that's what I want to say. And I agree with Councillor Sisson that there's other costs to running it, and that's one of the biggest issues we've had, is that all of a sudden we put summer ice in and the staff complement no longer could do burials at the cemetery, so we contracted out. They couldn't cut the grass at the cemetery, so we contracted it out. The staffing complement gets sucked into that facility, and a lot of other things go on the wayside, so there are other costs involved. I'm not against bringing our programs for utilizing the ice at full complement, like to be able to use them more, but I have to go back to the cost of operating that facility at over $2 million. It's just crazy. And I see on our budget summary that we had last week that it's going to go up and over 6% again. So I don't know what we want to do here, but we just can't look at this report and think we actually made $20,000 in last year for summer ice rentals. I don't think it's there.
MCFO, do you wish?
I was gonna clarify that looking at staffing costs, whether the summer ice is in or out is going to be the same. So I looked at the numbers and I agree with the numbers. And this is a business case that has grown over the past couple of years, that we can see that the revenue is going up. And we saw the delegation today that said that they're willing to bring more programs and ice rentals forward if the summer ice goes in. So it's building blocks to make sure that a facility that you've spent a lot of money on is fully full to the capacity that we can do to bring the revenue in to offset fixed costs. So from my standpoint, these numbers are built into the 2025 budget to date. And if we had to remove summer ice, we would have to adjust those numbers, which would affect the bottom line of the tax increase.
Sorry, Councillor Saini.
Thank you. I think the time that we should have looked at operating and staffing costs is when we thought about building the building. It's a little bit too late now to go back and say, we're not going to do this anymore. That building's not going to disappear. It's a huge asset to us. And we've got to take full advantage of this. And we have to find ways to bring this in to support the rest of the community. I mean, our operating costs, our staffing costs, yes, they're up. Absolutely. Totally agree with Councillor Sisson on that. However, it's too late. Frankly, the child is here. We've got to take the best care of it we can. We've got to nurture that. We've got an opportunity to make sure that we bring sports to kids. And I had the opportunity of meeting one of the one of the women who won an amazing award in hockey at one of our meetings, and how she talked about the importance of sports and how you get people involved in self-esteem and mental health and the training. I think those are things we're leaving out when we look at the infrastructure. And I'm excited to have this as a way of encouraging sports, albeit I'd rather play them than watch them, but that's another story. But I think that this is really something we've got to look at when we do our strategic plan. And how do we bring other people who are feeling left out of this back in, because we cannot turn away now. We have this here in our community. It is an amazing asset, and we have to make sure that, one, it isn't sold, but two, if it was ever sold, they never want to be anywhere else but in Minden. So I think we have to just really support this strongly and find, if our other community members are not supporting it, what are the issues that would help them to find a way to benefit from this as well. So that's, I think we're there, and I think we just have to, to give it that 3 or 4 years, I think is almost an understatement. It's here. It's not going to go away in 3 or 4 years. We have to keep building for it and show that our support for it. I'll stop now. Thank you.
Councillor Sisson.
Just wanted to say, we're not saying that the staff are going to be paid, yes, but what's happening is the other parts of the township are suffering. We're paying $30,000 or $40,000 now for getting grass cut, that if they didn't have summer ice, we do that ourselves. So that's another $40,000 that you can either take away or add on or whatever. It's just not a true picture.
Madam CEO. Councillor McKelvey.
I'm thinking there's almost two different issues here from the delegations that were here. I guess they knew we were going to talk about this today, but Owen Flood wants to run 8 weeks. We're not planning to put the ice in for July and August, are we? What's in the budget?
So through the chair, for the 2025 season, we'd be looking to start our ice rentals July 22nd.
Same as we did last year.
Yeah, so
Okay,
we're a week ahead. The goal would be that we would infiltrate for 2026 to start at the beginning of July.
So, I mean, as far as Mr. Flood wanting to bring his business down here, like, he won't do July in Halliburton and August here. I asked him that last year, actually. So he wants to run it the whole time out of one facility. So I just wanted to make sure we're not actually considering putting the ice in back in June for him to have a July school here. Okay, that's fine. And as far as the May part, that they wanted to make sure that we leave their ice in for them to have their rookie camp. We do that anyways, right?
Yeah, and through the chair, figure skating continues.
Right.
as well.
So just wanted to make sure everybody realizes we're not quite the bad guy here, that the big question is whether or not we want to start that plant that early to put ice in for end of July for the month of August. Then.
I think it's the one thing that, from the presentations this morning, there was an awful lot of local content. In other words, local students and students or children that were making use of these facilities and these camps and so on and so forth. So it's not like we're doing it for people other than, our Minden and, Halliburton locales. The one thing that you did bring up when you said that, people from other areas are looking towards us. One of the things, I know this is difficult for everybody to hear, but one of the things I discussed with Dysart is the fact that, our rates for both of our buildings tend to be a bit low compared to other locations, and that we need to be working together to get them to a place where they help us break even a bit more. But I would hate to, take somebody who's, I don't know, non-local from Bracebridge or whatever, where they're paying, $170 an hour, and they come here and they only have to pay 140 or something like that. I would want to make sure that they pay at least as much as they would be paying if it was available in their municipality. But overall, as you said, this building is here. It is for the usage of, our community in general. And the situation we have is we still have the gym and the walking track and all these things that, so the building has to be open, it has to be staffed. If we are not, losing money on this, then I think that, this is something we should at least try out, at least attempt to see if this is something worthwhile for us to be doing. And it doesn't, no matter how much the cost of the propane is or, other things, I think that we have to, we have to give it a shot. Because there is a benefit to the community, and there is a possibility of, like they said, we've got the large ice pad, and so, if the more senior hockey players or NHL players want to do something, they want to be doing it on a regulation size rink. So there seems to be other marketing opportunities to getting this. So I think it's something that we should definitely at least try. Councillor Sisson?
I'd like to remind you that local means Halliburton County. Probably 50% of the people are out of Minden Township, but it's the Minden ratepayers that's paying for all the expenses.
Well, fine. Councillor McKelvey?
What you mentioned there made me question, can we charge extra for groups outside the county? Well, no, I know, but if we were to amend our fees and charges by law, can you do that? Can you do the Muskoka League comes for more money?
So I think I was just going to kind of wrap up perspective and answer Councillor McKelvey's question. I think for me, folks, I share the concerns about cost for sure. But this is a jewel in our community. You also have staff, myself included, who walked in here a year ago and inherited this facility and the programs. And as the report indicates, we've only been operational, fully operational, for a couple of years. 2022 was not a typical year, 2023. Then 2024 was really only our second year to kind of grab onto this thing with brand new staff trying to operate and program some of our facility. I would love the opportunity to work with the staff to grow what could potentially be in this facility. And to your question, Councillor McKelvey, I'd love to explore if we were to entertain external groups. Yes, you can have an out-of-town fee. We would have to bring that proposal back to council. We'd have to amend our fees and charges bylaw. But, you know, to Councillor Sisson's concern about local residents burdening all of the costs, there are ways that we can look at supporting our programs locally, building our programs, and if that means with some external folks, there might be different fee structures. But we haven't had the chance to even look at all that is potential. So our intention today was to bring you a preliminary report that did a high-level review of the last 2 summers. As the Director of Community Services and our Director of Finance and Treasurer have indicated, we've mirrored last year in terms of putting together the 2025 budget. And we'd look at, over the next year or 2, doing further analysis on what could be potential for this facility. Thank you.
Councillor Johansson.
I'm just wondering, I mean, as you all know, I'm all about the events and having things busy and stuff, but I'm listening to the other councillors as well, and it is a bit concerning. A couple months ago, we were talking about bringing the cemetery services lawn maintenance back in-house. Like, what would that look like if we were to do that? And how would that look like at the arena? Like, you know, they're all valid questions. Kudos to you to try what you're doing, but I'm just wondering if we can get some more information back and all sorts of things so that we're more comfortable going.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, you will have a full report in front of you for the January budget review related to the cemeteries. I think I would caution council as well in going back and looking at our staffing complement. I don't know that we've been at full complement in the community services area over the last year and a half. So we are very conscious about the impact of running summer ice and the impact to other services. We're, I believe, up to full complement now. So we're going to be, you know, I think there's better opportunity to support all services, but I don't want to speak to that cemetery report before we bring it forward in January. I also, you know, I think for me, there still is opportunity for additional revenue streams here. But if we pull the plug on the base that we've started to build, I don't know that we'll ever get it back.
So the motion here was to take this as information. What was the follow-up going to be on that?
We were simply asked, Mr. Mayor, to bring back a report on summer ice. The challenge that we have is if you're considering pulling the plug on summer ice, our user groups are planning their seasons now. And so you heard from some of our delegations this morning that if there is not summer ice, their revenues are impacted. They'll be looking at alternate arrangements somewhere else. My fear, I don't want to be alarmist, but my fear is if they find alternate arrangements somewhere else, it may not just be summer ice that is impacted. It may be year round.
Deputy Mayor Shell.
I realize there's a cost to this, obviously, like I said earlier, but there isn't an arena in the country that this comes out on top as a revenue. It is a service that we provide for the community. There's not a lot here for kids. I grew up here and the demographic has changed drastically from the number of small children compared to seniors that live here, et cetera. And I think we need to allow staff, like we said, a couple years to let this program work, reassess. It may come at a cost to us that we weren't prepared for, but as Councillor Saini said, the baby's here, we have to take care of it. And there's no point in having it sit empty, because every time that you book for these, you're showing the different programs that want to come here. That also affects our downtown stores, and restaurants, et cetera. So anyway, I'm in favor of giving it a shot.
What is our motion?
Mr. Mayor, the motion is just to receive it as information.
And
It
you're
was just a
saying we
review.
need to do something more.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying we built the 2025 summer ice into the budget. We're providing a report that was required to come back to council. If you want to amend your motion to say whether or not council supports summer ice for 2025, you can amend your motion.
Sorry, Councilor Ingram.
Can we not look at this in the first meeting in January that shows more detail perhaps? And what comes down to the numbers that all the departments bring in on whether we do things. And maybe that's one of the things we can't because of the cost, or maybe it's one of the things we can do. But we don't have enough information on the whole budget right now to even make a decision like that, I don't think. Thank you.
I guess what I'm hearing is that if we decide to pull the summer ice, we need to make a decision on whether or not we'll continue at least as we have been regarding summer ice, or people will be making other arrangements before the January meeting. So
Right, just for the ice allocation policy that we have in place for summer ice request, it's February 1st. So these organizations are already pre-planning to get that information and submitting their ice allocation for February 1st.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, my preference, if I can suggest it, is council needs to give an indication today. We have built summer ice into the budget. If you're not in support of summer ice, we need to go back and revise the budget. And we need to communicate to our user groups that there is not support for summer ice.
okay, and when we talk summer ice here, just to be perfectly clear, we're talking about at the levels that we have had it up to now, not expanding it in any way.
Yeah, through the chair. So it would be the same summer ice to start July 22nd.
Councilor McKelvey?
I'm finding this very difficult to have to make a decision today in isolation of a 9% tax rate. But I'm prepared to say personally that I will support this staying the same as it did. However, I want the revenues up. So I want to see us look at the changes of rates for outside users of the facility. I mean, we're talking that we're going to build this use. We're going to have this place running 24 hours a day if Candace could have her way. But it has to be an increase in revenue to cover that. So can we please look at that as being a serious consideration that we're going to increase the rental rates for summer ice for at least outside users or any users?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we can bring that information back to council.
Okay, so we have to amend the resolution. Well, I thought I was clear. I think that the marginal costs, we're not losing money at this. And I think that because so much of the usage of it, supports, like I said, supports the junior A hockey team, which I think has spillover effects on all of the community. It affects the businesses, the programs that they're looking to have has a lot of people who are, local residents who are using them, whether it be in figure skating or schools or camps or whatever. And I think that I do agree that if, people from outside Haliburton County want to use this, they should be certainly be paying as much as they would be paying if they were back at their home arena. But I think that we need to give this a chance. I mean, we've got this building, as long as it's not, going to be costing us lots of money to do this. I think we got to give it a chance to see if it can increase the revenues. The more it's used, the more potential it has, and that brings more people into the building, and more people who join the gym and do whatever. So that's my feel. Go ahead.
So this would be an amendment, Councilor McKelvey and Councilor Saini. Basically, I just have that council directs staff to report back on user fees for summer ice programs, or what do you? Oh, just that we receive it as information.
But we also have
review
to say
service.
we have to support.
Okay. Is that, do you want anything else added in that? I need some wording that you would like in the motion.
Just to be clear, we're in support then of maintaining the status quo for another year.
Right.
That's correct? Yes.
Okay.
Minimum. Okay, and then
Right.
with further discussion regarding fees and charges by law.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Further discussion to try to increase revenues, however it may come.
I just have, and further that council supports summer ice for 2025, and further that council directs staff to report back on user fees for summer ice. Did I capture it all?
I think so. So
Okay.
read the whole thing.
Yep. I can say to increase revenues if you'd like. Okay. Moved by Councilor McKelvey, seconded by Councilor Saini, that council receive report 2435, Community Services Department Summer Ice Reviews Information, and further that council supports the summer ice program for 2025, and further that council directs staff to report back on user fees for summer ice. Do you want to say to increase revenues? No?
I think you've
Okay.
got it.
Yes, right.
Yeah, exactly. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. So you've been waiting a long time. You've only had 6 calls.
Good day. Thank
Please.
you. Through you, Mr. Chair. I'll try to be as brief as possible. The first report before you from the fire department is to have some excess equipment declared surplus for the purpose of disposal. The MSA, SCBA, and the AMCUS auto extrication equipment has been replaced. It's been sitting, gathering dust in the fire hall for quite some time. So we're hoping to dispose of that and perhaps recuperate a little bit of money. The 2014 Ford F-150 designated as Car 2. We're hoping to have the replacement for it in service possibly next week. I'm not going to hold my breath, but we are hopeful that it will be in place next week. And likewise have it declared surplus so we can dispose of it.
Any questions? Councillor Ingram?
Through the chair, this does not reflect on you in any way, shape, or form because you're new here. But how does a vehicle get to the point that it needs $19,000 worth of repairs?
That's a very good question, Councillor, and I don't have an answer for you.
Think you do? That won't happen anymore, I doubt.
I hope so.
Any other questions? Councillor McKelvey?
Just could the staff look for some other things that should be surplused and sold too? For a generator at the arena comes to mind, sitting at the back parks should.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we can do that.
Any other questions? Please read the resolution.
Moved by Councillor McKelvey, seconded by Councillor Saney, that council receive report 2417 Fire Department surplus equipment as information, and that council deems the AMCUS auto extrication tools and the MSA SCBA as surplus and directs staff to dispose of the equipment as outlined in this report. And further, that council deems the 2014 Ford F-150 as surplus and directs staff to dispose of the vehicle as outlined in this report, and that money received from the sale of equipment be placed into the Fire Department General Reserve Fund to offset future costs.
All those in favor? That is carried. On to your emergency response plan.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. The purpose of this report was just, there was a request, I guess, in the spring to bring forth the council to update the positions of personnel in the emergency management team. From my understanding, there were one staff member that was responsible for 2 positions. And so we have just updated the plan, noting that these 2 positions are now being filled by 2 separate staff. And then just for council's information, we included the actual emergency management plan.
And I assume that as new information or new things come up, this is just constantly updated through the course of the year. It's not like it's once a year it's looked at sort of thing.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, absolutely. The emergency management plan is looked at quite frequently, is updated as necessary.
Yeah, because I note that HHS, discussed at the meeting last week that, they wanted to, they have their own plan and like, how do we get them to all to fit together and so on. So it's, these are things that'll happen over time. Okay. Councillor McKelvey?
The public education lengthy supplement, is that posted on the, I didn't go look, so it could be there. Is it on, like, how do you get this out to people that they should actually be doing this?
So through the chair to the councillor, all the information with regards for public access to the emergency management plan is available on the township website. As far as specifics, I'm not certain what you're asking, but we do make the plan available to the public through the township's website.
I think what Councillor McKelvey is probably referring to are things like this, the emergency response, not the kit that you should have in case of emergencies, emergency preparedness, and so on. I mean, I basically took it as my, Christmas list, so I know that what I can get for family members now.
Certainly, through the chair, yes. The township does have information available through the website. There are also some of the both federal and provincial websites that offer that information as well.
Councillor McKelvey?
Oh, sorry, I didn't turn that off. Just, there's the evacuation planning checklist. So somebody that's disabled would go through here and check all these things off and then submit this to you so you know about them? Or is this just a personal put it in my back pocket or on Bob's Christmas list. Like,
So through the chair, yes, Counselor, that is just for information purposes only.
the other, if I,
Yeah.
the other thing I just wanted to point out was on the actual plan, and I don't know what page it is, but it's listed that we have a permit clerk / MLEO, which we don't have that combined position anymore. So the next update, you'll want to fix that perhaps.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Please read the resolution.
Moved by Counselor Saney, seconded by Counselor Sisson, that council receive report 24009, emergency response plan update as information, and that council approve the updated emergency response plan for the township.
All those in favor? That is carried. Moving on to planning. Building. Well, we're going to plan to build.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and Council. What you have before you is report number 2416, the monthly activity report for the Building and Bylaw Department. As you can see that our numbers are down from last month. We have 3 dwellings that were issued last month, and secondary dwelling units are up actually from the previous month, as well as the total numbers are down by about 8 permits in general. So with the little bit less issuance of permits, we were able to get out and do a little bit more bylaw stuff, which I'll cover shortly. Our estimated construction values for the month of October is $3.387 million, which is almost $3 million less than the month previous. On-site sewage systems, 10 permits were issued, which is 3 less than the previous month. We did have 1 septic permit that was closed, which was related to the septic reinspection program. So that's 1 off the books for us. Bylaw for the month of October, as you can see, it was much more active this month than the month previous. We had 24 site visits, we opened up 20 new investigations, and we managed to close just as many investigations in that month there as well, too. And the STR program is still ongoing in a rollout. Just a minor correction on the 12 applications to date. We actually have 15 as of now. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions? Seeing none, please read the resolution.
Moved by Counselor Saney, seconded by Counselor Sisson, that council receive report 2416, building bylaw services, October 2024 monthly activity summary as information.
All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now we go on to planning.
Good afternoon. Yes, good afternoon, council. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So report 2495 is our monthly planning update. So there's some common threads noted in the departmental highlights looking from October through ahead to December. So CAMBM does have all the information that they require for the 6 identified risk management plans. So work has commenced on that, and I will have an update for council in the new year. As well, we're very much looking forward to our planning technicians starting second week of December, and really what I'm hoping from that is an increase in service levels for the planning department. So we're very much looking forward to that individual starting. And also staff are working on getting applications on the website. That will be any of the active applications that we do have. It is requiring us to create a whole new page because it's not something that the township has had available on their website before. So it's a lot of information to compile together. So staff are working on that. And hopefully we'll have that up very soon. As well, just as additional update, we've gone from 1 active potential site to 3 for communication towers. And so that will be going through the pre-consultation process. And as well, we have an additional pre-consultation for a proposed resort that staff will be reviewing. But happy to answer any other questions.
Any questions? Councillor McKelvey?
I appreciate that getting all the information on the website and everything for that part is work, and it's going to be a bit, but can we please get the updates on the reports until that actually has happened then? Because I don't believe we've had it for the last 2 meetings because the link doesn't get us anywhere, so.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that yes, if it's not ready for the next monthly update, then I'll make sure that I add that to the report.
Any other questions? Sorry, Councillor Sani?
Yes, just an afterthought I had here. Do you see any complications in the 3 towers or questions that might come forward that we need to look
Sorry.
at extra costs?
Yes,
I think she has a recycled one if you want to use her crystal ball.
through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll consult with Chelsea and the crystal ball for sure. And yeah, unfortunately, at this time, I'm not able to comment on that.
Go ahead.
Moved by Councillor McKelvey, seconded by Councillor Sisson, that council receive report 2495 planning October monthly planning update for information.
All those in favor? Carried. I thought we were going to do the a lot of these. I can't remember if these ones have any exceptions. I thought we were going to do them under consent.
If I may, through you, Mr.
Yep.
Mayor, basically, yes, we normally would, but there was only 2, so I didn't think
Okay.
there was a need
All right.
to do a consent for 2.
That's fine. Okay.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So report 2496 is for Shore Road Lands application PLSRA 2024-059, Borma and Schulten, and this is requesting to proceed through policy 19. I have nothing further to add.
Questions? Please read the resolution.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Shell, seconded by Councillor McKelvey, that council receive report 2496 planning as information, and further that council direct the planning department proceed with application PLSRA 2024-059 in accordance with policy 19 as amended.
All those in favor? That is carried. Next one.
Report 24-98 through you, Mr. Mayor, is for Shore Road Allowance PLSRA 2020-043 Kroll. And in this case, they have successfully reached the end of the process. And subject to council's approval, there is a bylaw to be referred to the bylaw section of the agenda for conveyance of the Shore Road Allowance.
Any questions? Seeing none, please read.
Moved by Councillor McKelvey, seconded by Deputy Mayor Shell, that council receives report 2498 planning as information, and that bylaw 24-128 be referred to the bylaw section of the agenda to stop up, close, and convey part of the original Shore Road Allowance with respect to application PLSRA 2020-0043.
All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. Take us snowmobiling, Madam Clerk.
At least we have a bit of snow now. So this report before council today was provided by the Haliburton County Snowmobile Association as well as the Happy Wanderers Snowmobile Club. And they are requesting MOUs be, which is a memorandum of understanding, be executed for the prescribed snowmobile trail land use, just for permitted use, and the attached schedules and mapping along with legal descriptions are for council's review. So we are just seeking approval to execute the MOU. And staff just wanted to advise that we do recommend executing these memorandums of understanding, as it does support a huge local tourism and promotes the winter recreation in the area.
Okay, any questions? Seeing none, please read the resolution.
Move, but
Sorry.
I don't have a question about this, but I have a question from their delegation where they asked this bridge be named. Is that going to come back?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, yes, so I have been advised that there is some more correspondence coming forward to the next meeting. And part of that request is to name the bridge. It's one of their members that
I
helped start
realize
up
that.
the association. So I have not seen that as of today, but yes, there should be another piece of correspondence.
That's fine. Just he mentioned it this morning. I mean, I have no problems with this. The snowmobile industry is the only thing keeping us alive in the wintertime.
In the winter time, yeah. Okay.
Mhm.
Moved by Counselor Saney, seconded by Counselor Sisson, that council receives report 2438 administration memorandum of understanding Halliburton County Snowmobile Association and Happy Wanderers Snowmobile Club to permit snowmobile trails as information. That council directs the mayor and clerk to execute the MOU with the Halliburton County Snowmobile Association for prescribed snowmobile trail and land use permission as attached in Schedule A. And further, that council directs the mayor and clerk to execute the MOU with the Happy Wanderers Snowmobile Club for the prescribed snowmobile trail and use permission as attached in Schedule B.
All those in favor? That is carried. All right, we will now be moving into closed session for all those watching. This is pretty much the end of our open meeting. We will be coming back only for some procedural motions. We'll start closed at 1 p.m.
I have to read the resolution.
Yep, please
Okay.
read the resolution.
Okay. Moved by Counselor Sisson, seconded by Counselor Saney. Be it resolved that council proceed into closed session at 12:50 a.m. for the purpose of discussing one item pursuant to Section 239(2)B of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended regarding personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees' service contract.
All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Welcome back, Madam Clerk. Please read the motion to resume.
Moved by Counselor Sisson, seconded by Counselor Saney. Be it resolved the closed session adjourn at 1:15 p.m. and open session resume.
All those in favor? That is carried. Report from closed session.
Moved by Counselor Ingram, seconded by Counselor Johansson. Be it resolved that the direction given in closed session be approved.
Those in favor? Carried. And bylaws, were there any questions or comments on the bylaws? Counselor McKelvey.
Just, I want to clarify that, although it's not required in a bylaw, that this new recruitment for deputy CBO municipal law enforcement officer is also going to be manager of facilities.
This individual and the building department will have responsibility for the township's building assets.
Okay, so we're not actually making him facilities manager then?
He will have responsibility in his job description for the building assets. He's not operating our facilities, but the overall asset management. So if things need to be replaced, we need to put capital programs together, that sort of thing.
Please read the resolution.
Moved by Counselor Sisson, seconded by Counselor Saney. Be it resolved that the following bylaws be received, read a first time, considered read a second and third time, and finally passed with the corporate seal affixed. Bylaw 24-128, PLSRA 20-20043. Bylaw 24-130 to appoint a deputy CBO MLEO.
All those in favor? That is carried. Confirming bylaw.
Moved by Counselor Johansson, second by Counselor Ingram, that bylaw 24-131 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council held during its meeting of November 28th, 2024, be received, read a first time, considered read a second and third time, and finally passed with the corporate seal affixed.
All those in favor? That is carried. Adjournment.
Moved by Counselor McKelvey, seconded by Counselor Sisson. Be it resolved that the November 28th, 2024 regular council meeting is hereby adjourned at 1:17 p.m.
All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you, everybody. Council has an education and training session related to the Community Engagement Project on Tuesday, December 3rd, which will be held in closed session. The next regular council meeting is scheduled for Thursday, December 12th at 9 a.m. and we'll be back home in our own council chambers for these meetings. Thank you all.